Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Modern Squid Podcast, where we get to know the people behind our favorite writers and brands. In this episode, we meet Brad Cruz, co founder of Golden Hour Coffee Moto. He is a self described Triumph fanboy, coffee aficionado, and also entrepreneur. And with that, let's get started. Brad from Golden Hour Coffee, I appreciate you joining me today. Can't wait to get into this.
Yeah.
So just before our intro, we were kind of talking about your social media presence or lack thereof. And so I wanted to kind of follow up on that briefly because you were mentioning that you kind of take the approach, even with the Golden Hour marketing, that, you know, it's better to kind of be the person you see occasionally and appreciate the post versus that person who posts every day and you get kind of sick of seeing it. It reminded me of like two different methods of thought that I've kind of come across because I've got an interest in marketing. And on one side, you have the marketers and the salespeople that say, hey, you know, people have to know you and trust you before they buy from you, right? It's like you're leading someone down that buyer journey of, you know, like, trust, and then buy. And so the more engagement you have with someone, the better chance you have for that to happen. And I think I saw somewhere that someone has to see your company 15 times or something before they actually will end up buying something from you. And then on the other hand, you've got that book of power or whatever it's called. I don't know the exact name, but it's like the book of power. And in there, they talk about being only there sometimes. Like, don't overstay your welcome so that every time someone sees you, they're excited to see you.
Right.
You know, and I'm wondering how much of that was sort of a pre-planned approach and how much of it is just like, this is my natural inclination with things, and I'd like to bring that over into the business side as well.
Yeah. You know, it wasn't sort of a pre-planned approach. And I think it just sort of naturally came about of just how we work, just as a person. And, you know, I think it just, everyone is so inundated with seeing each other just online and digitally over pictures. So it's just like, you know, you lose that sense of personality and, you know, being natural and actually being a person. And it kind of goes along with, like, you know, you text someone, you know, we're all texting now as opposed to talking on the phone, and you sort of lose, you know, that perception of humanness. And so, you know, it's hard to gauge how someone is trying to market themselves. You know, there's a lot of misperception and misconceptions. I don't know if you watch Key and Peele at all, but the first thing I think of is a skit where they're like on Skype or whatever, and then they're like, keep losing connection and they keep misinterpreting each other because, you know, their text, they think they're meaning one way, but actually means the other, and he's getting offended by it. So, you know, there's a lot of misconception across just digital media. So, you know, I think there's it's a fine, I say, gray area. And then there's a line of that sort of separates the two. And, you know, and I think it's great to keep people engaged at the same time, but also without having to sort of make it exhausting for those taking in that content as well. So, you know, and I think that naturally comes of how we are, just as a person. So we tend to not over inundate with people with content, which seems to be, you know, appreciative in some cases. Yeah, because some brands I follow is just like, you know, skip. You know, I know what you guys have. And I think if someone was really interested, they would actually go in deeper. And so that's kind of where some of my thought process goes as well. It's just like, well, if someone really cares enough and they're interested in the brand, you know, they drink coffee, you know, they're exploring new ideas, then they'll dive in deeper. And, you know, those kinds of customers and those kinds of folks, you know, are really what's going to be key to sort of growing a business. And that expands off of that because they can be your people who can help market, and that sort of stems outward and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my own personal view on it falls somewhere in between, in that I think what's most important is authenticity. So if you're making posts because you genuinely have something you want to share, and you're not just trying to follow an algorithm where it says, okay, you need to post 3 times a day at these specific times because your analytics say this is when the people that, like your page are online, and blah, 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 right? I mean, I think that when you start seeing that, that's when people start tuning out, because it just, whether they know it or not, subconsciously, they know that that's not an authentic post, that this is something that's just being generated by math,
Yep.
versus the people who actually, it's like you're out riding, or you're at the coffee shop, and that, for instance, this new blend is going to be something that people who like your coffee are going to be interested to see. You take a picture, you put it up, and then your followers who actually care about your coffee will be genuinely interested to see that post, versus waking up in the morning and going, okay, I've got to post 3 pictures of coffee today.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
I mean, it kind of goes along with the whole influencer thing too, because it's just like you got to like keep up your brand and image, because because people do care about how you look and all these things, because they're just obsessed with that sort of thing. So there's people for that, but that's also like, that's the customers that they want. But if that's not the customer that you want, then you tailor to that. So there's a lot of different places to sort of pick and pull. Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head with, you mentioned the whole algorithms and doing things that are sort of set in stone, where it's like, I have to do it because it's in the book and it's the rules. It's like, well, so someone who may have been successful because it worked for them, but probably not for you, depending on how you look at it. So yeah.
okay. So I see you got a German Shepherd back there.
Let's see if I can. Yeah. That's Benson.
Oh man,
he's the big guy. I have 2 German Shepherds. One is a Belgian Malinois mix, and she's a ball of energy, but he's a lazy one. Yeah. And I have 2 cats.
Only 2?
2 cats, 2 dogs. So
that's not enough. You need more.
I need more.
I've got 6 cats.
Goodness.
I had 2 dogs, but one of my dogs died back in March. And then I technically have another dog that I have sort of shared custody with my ex-wife. But with the whole COVID thing, we're trying to stay isolated, so we're not doing the pass the dog back and forth right now.
Yeah.
But we used to do basically weekends, like every other weekend or something. She'd come drop her off, and she'd get to spend time with the other dogs and, with me. Now I just get to see pictures. But my parents actually used to raise and breed German Shepherds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I grew up with German Shepherds in the house all the time. And then when they moved to California, they started working with this guy who had connections with the German military, because he used to work there and was a dog handler and trainer. And so I'm sure you're aware of this, but a lot of the German Shepherd breeds in the US are really inbred, and it's causing issues with joints, hip dysplasia, allergies, all these different things. And so they were trying to bring in new bloodlines into the US to help, diversify that, so that there's not so much inbreeding, and hopefully the health of the breed would improve. So yeah, they were importing these dogs from Germany and then bringing them with the US lines, and did that for a while.
Wow. I know it's sort of a thing of just all their, and I guess it's with every breed, there's always going to be some sort of genetic hereditary thing that they get. But I know the hip stuff, I'm like super like hyper aware of, like, when he gets up, and he's getting older. So I'm like giving him dog massages and whatnot, just to like, keep him easy. But he's good.
Yeah, my lab, he's getting super old, and I just recently bought him one of these like Serta memory foam bed things, right?
Yeah.
And it's like $100 dog bed.
Man.
But he loves that thing. Like he crawls up on it and then he's out. And for the first time ever, I've had to go and like shake him awake at dinner time because he's such a food hound that normally he's up and pestering us for food when it's dinner time. And then yesterday, the day before, I had to like shake him and say, "Hey, bub, I've got your food." You know, he wakes up and he's like, "Oh my God, it's dinner time." So,
man, the amount of love we give to our pets sometimes, it's, you know, compared to like 10, 15 years ago, you know, I think of my parents when we were growing up with pets and stuff. It's like, man, they did not give them as much love as they used to compared to how we do now. You know?
Yeah, they're like children now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, less kids, more pets. Seems like that seems to be the ongoing trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what brought you to German Shepherds?
Well, the short story is, you know, we've always wanted a dog. But there's always that thing of commitment and, you know, big dogs and dogs require more care and all that stuff. And that was just sort of like the short term, like hesitancy. And, you know, we've already had 2 cats, and, I woke up one morning and I forget, you know, this was like 2016. I just woke up one morning and was just like, hey, let's actually, sorry, before I talked to Kiana, I was just like looking at my phone because I was just like, you know, window shop and, you know, just see what's out there at like the SPCA, and, you know, and this Australian Shepherd came up, and I'm like, oh man, he sounds like a great personality. He's really, you know, cute looking, you know, he seems like a great dog to just sort of train, and he seems to do really well with cats. And I was just like, you know what, let's just do it. I was like, Kiana, want to go to the SPCA today? She's like, okay. And not knowing that, you know, that we were going to adopt a dog that day. So we get to the SPCA, and this was in Dublin. So, you know, roughly 45 minutes away. And, you know, I saw the picture, you know, it was posted the day before, you know, saw it that morning, took us it took us an hour, you know, whatever to get ready. Drove over there only to find out that the dog got adopted already. So within that time window, that dog got adopted. So we were like kind of heartbroken a little bit about it, just because it was just like we had our hopes up. And so we're like, okay, whatever. And then we realized that there was an animal shelter across the street. And so we looked, and that's where we found Benson. And he was 4 or 5 at the time. And, you know, just kind of like, you know, German Shepherds, you know, they're good dogs. You know, we really didn't have a lot of knowledge around German Shepherds at the time. So we kind of took a leap of faith of, you know, adopting him. Because I wanted a bigger dog that was, you know, that would do well with cats, that we'd be able to just sort of train and, you know, and do all that. And, you know, we got really lucky because it's just like, he's also not sort of typical, kind of like your high energy German Shepherd. He's like super low energy, kind of like really good with everybody. He's like the chillest dog that I've ever had and owned and worked with. And yeah, it's just a weird thing. And I guess that's why we have 2 now, because he was so easy. It's like, oh, let's just get another dog. And she was just like the complete opposite of like, oh my God, she's so much energy, and, you know, she's kind of a ruckus, and we always have to like call her. You know, we had her do a board and train program just because she was she was neglected as a puppy. So she had a bit of a rehabilitation that needed. So, but she's good now, but obviously it's ongoing, and it's just her personality. She's kind of all over the place, but she's fun. She likes to snuggle. And, you know, they're both very good and different in their own ways. And, you know, I think it helps the dynamics of the household, especially now that we're home all day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's good.
I mean, German Shepherds, they're fantastic dogs, but, you know, you can find there's a couple different camps. You've got really high drive German Shepherds, and then you've got sort of the typical laid back German Shepherds. And, you know, they're completely different animals. And
Mm-hmm.
Belgian Malinois in general tend to be really high drive.
Yep.
So if you take a Belgian Malinois and mix it with a German Shepherd,
yep,
definitely a recipe for, you better know how to keep them busy. Otherwise they're going to be destructive.
Yep. Yeah. And luckily Shaka is the other dog. She's not destructive at all. But her drive is definitely up there compared to Benson.
Yeah.
So we try and keep her busy.
We had a German Shepherd growing up named Arthur, and he's he is the earliest dog that I can really remember growing up. And I grew up in a military family, so we would move every 3 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had just moved to New York not too long ago, and we were getting to know the neighborhood kids and all that, right? And we were living on military housing in New York, and so everyone around us was military kids.
Yeah.
And so, we made some fast friends, and one day some people came out, some of the kids in the neighborhood came out knocking on our door. And my mom went to the backyard or to the back door and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "Can Arthur come out and play?" Because she thought they were going to come ask for my sister or I, but they wanted our dog to come outside and play with them because he was just so friendly, and he used to like pull them around on their sleds and all stuff, So our dog helped us make friends.
Oh, I see how it is.
It was a joke. I mean, they wanted us to come out too, but they were just like so stoked that we had such a friendly dog who was big and willing to put up with all the little kid stuff that goes along with being a little kid, So anyway, I've got a soft spot in my heart for German Shepherds, but I've adopted all my dogs too. I mean, all my animals are adopted. And so I just haven't really run across a German Shepherd, to be honest, that was out there, because they tend to be picked up fast.
Yeah. I was actually surprised too, because I thought German Shepherds were sort of like this like high tier dog, which I'm sure they are. And they are. And it's funny. I think there were 3 other people at the shelter at the time when I was adopting Benson, and there's this one woman who I'm sure she was a breeder because she was super weird. She was looking for German Shepherds, and she wanted to pick Benson up if we weren't going to adopt him. And it's funny because I think that might have been also a driver too on like adopting him, because like I don't want him to end up with her. Like we should just pick him up anyways. Because there was another German Shepherd there too that was a lot younger and had a ton of energy, but it was just like maybe we're not ready for that. So German Shepherds, like they're a lot. When I'd see pictures, and I follow a couple rescues and stuff, they don't come up too often. And I specifically follow a German Shepherd rescue, and they don't post that often too. So I can only imagine they're
and a lot of times they try to match them up with people with German Shepherd experience, or other like kind of dog handling experience, because they are a big dog, and if you get a high drive German Shepherd and you don't have any experience training a dog or working with dogs, then you'll be in a lot of trouble.
Oh yeah. I know. I feel very blessed and lucky to have the 2 dogs are very good in the house.
Yeah, I mean, labs are the same way. There's 2 different breeds or lines of labs, which I didn't know anything about labs until I adopted the one that I have now. But there's like a show line, and then there's a working line. And the working line is like Marley and Me. I don't know if you've heard of that book and the movie.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they get super destructive because they've got so much energy.
Yeah.
And then the other end, you've got like the show line, and they tend to be pretty laid back and, tend to get fat over time and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's the one I got. I got super lucky because, I had a German Shepherd or Australian Shepherd mix as my other dog, and she was super high energy. And that was enough. Like if I had 2, it would have been
too much.
It would have been way too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about, what would life be like if we did end up adopting that Australian Shepherd initially. Because I know that would probably be a different story. I'm sure there'd be a lot of training that would need to be involved in and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, when a dog is that smart and high energy, because German Shepherds are really smart dogs. But if they're not that high energy, you can sometimes get away with not keeping them occupied. But in general, Australian Shepherds tend to be that mix of high energy and super smart. And so they sort of need a job. Like you need to give them something to do and think about every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise they just go crazy.
Yep.
Because they've got that need to move along with the brains to really get into trouble. So
yeah, yep. Kind of like humans in a pandemic.
yeah, right. I know. So how did you end up meeting Kiana? Do I say her name Kiana? How do you say her name?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Yep, Kiana. We've been together for no, I have to do some math here. We're almost high school sweethearts, and so it's been 13, 14 years, I think, at this point. And we've been married for 4 years. We got married in 2016. So we've been together for a while, moved to many places together. And, it's definitely been quite an eventful journey together as well. And, we both grew up in the same town. We went to different high schools, but we sort of had the same group of friends. So that's how we kind of met. And Kiana has always been into the coffee industry game. It's funny because we both worked at Starbucks back then, and that's kind of how we sort of started to get common interests. So it's like, we sort of joke about, working there and all the drinks and all the stuff. And it sort of evolved from there. And she's had, multiple jobs in coffee in different parts of the industry. So, obviously as a barista, doing production, obviously roasting and doing all the behind the scenes stuff. Starbucks was really my only real coffee job. And I've worked in multiple cafes that had coffee. It's always been sort of part of my service career life in the past. But it's been on and off for us for sure. And we never really thought about starting a business until, recently. It's a few years ago. And it all sort of like culminated of just like, and it all sort of stems back to, it'd be cool to have some sort of like place to just sort of hang out and, with this in mind or with this specific interest. And also just because, and Kiana could probably shed some light on this probably down the road, but, there's also a lot of nuances in the coffee industry that tend to not go as well, or there's a lot of just ethical issues, as with every industry, there's always going to be some sort of problem that needs to be solved ethically and, and workers' rights and whatnot. And so, a lot of that, we also look to sort of solve for in that sense. But one thing that seems to sort of lack is, more community spaces where, community spaces of a special interest. And when I started writing, that's when it kind of like sparked a lot of things where it's just like, well, gosh, like, writing's really awesome. Are there places that people could just go and write? And so that's when we started like just doing all this research and stuff. And like, we found out there's a ton of places, obviously, outside of California. That's what I do. That's obviously in Oregon. I'm sure, CC Motorcycle Coffee. And there's a Spoken Moto up in Oregon as well. Numerous ones in Southern California. So, and, we were looking here in Northern California. It's just like, there's nothing really like that up here in Northern California. And, there's Excelsior now, which is awesome. And I think that's like the closest that we have here in the Bay Area, at least, to sort of go right now to. But it's also at the same time being in San Francisco, they tailor, I feel like they tailored their spot to sort of a neighborhood community. And it's awesome that, I've spoken to the owners there and they're all about the community, and serving that community and reviving that area. And, we really love what they're doing. And so some of our thought process was just like, well, build a community as well as giving sort of a reason for people to sort of get out and go to as like a meetup spot, and sort of have that as a community space for people to sort of just, gather, obviously it doesn't really apply now, would be awesome to have. And motorcycling sort of seems to tie some of that all together. And, it's funny. I was just, we were on vacation a couple of weeks ago. We actually went up to Oregon just to like see these coffee shops and seeing how they operate. And, it's too bad that we went during a pandemic, because we'd love to see what it looks like, when there's just a buttload of people in there. And we've seen pictures in the past, and, but seeing sort of people just sort of roll up, park, and sort of, obviously socially distancing, hanging out with their masks on, was really nice to see, that people just sort of stroll up, grab a coffee, hang out outside for hours and whatnot, just sort of catch up. And, it'd be great to have something like that here. But, so that's sort of something that we're trying to look forward to solving for. And, motorcycling sort of helps, be distant in a way also. And it's a one person sort of hobby also. So it sort of helps eliminate some gatherings, but at the same time, you can still somewhat do that, if that makes sense. I don't know. I was kind of talking out loud, but having a space like that share common interests, and that does interest others as well, is something that'd be great up here. And so that's kind of where Golden Hour sort of stemmed from. And as far as like Kiana and her coffee sort of expertise sort of helps mend some of the stuff together. I'm more of like the motorcycling side, and some of the obviously the business, financial, logistical things, and then Kiana's like the actual product itself. So we're banding the two together to hopefully, we'll see how it ends up. And obviously it's a little harder now, but hopefully in the next year or so, we'll just start to see some significant things happening.
Yeah. So I know on your guys' website, under your bio, you'd mentioned that you'd noticed a gap in the community of the Bay Area riders. Was this what you were talking about, like a specific place for Bay Area riders to come together for coffee, or was there some other aspect of the community that you thought was kind of lacking? That's sort of where I was coming from. I mean, there are multiple places that in the Bay Area that motorcyclists meet up here in the Bay Area. Obviously Alice is this historic one, that people would go to. But, and I've been to Alice's multiple times, and it's interesting to see, like, because it's so well known, there's a lot of riders that just come through there, as well as people in cars. And it becomes sort of this niche place, that almost seems like you're too cool to sort of be there. And, for a lot of new riders, and this was another focus for us too, is that, we want people to start riding, and, we welcome new riders and get encouraged, because, it's a fun hobby. It's economical to a certain extent. And, it's less cars on the road given the Bay Area. So, there's a lot of pluses into sort of getting into it. So, part of our mission too was sort of to encourage people to start riding. And, thinking about some of all these places that have, been historically a meetup spot, and just being from an outsider, just observing it and, going through forums and stuff, some people are a little bit intimidated, of some of these places, just because, a lot of people ride in groups, packs, and no one just kind of shows up by themselves, to just sort of like try and meet friends. So, and, that's gonna, not bring that much encouragement for new riders for sure. So, while these places are awesome and are good meetup spots, we want to help tailor some of these, how do we be more welcoming, for new riders, and people who want to learn more. Cause a lot of the things, it's like, if we do have a cafe, it'd be great to just like, set up cones in the parking lot and do like new rider drills, and, learn how to corner properly, do slow speed maneuvers on a Honda Grom or something like that, so something fun like that, to help sort of bring a crowd in, and, just sort of learn from each other, as opposed to being like,
showing up on your brand new Ducati Panigale, it's like, man, I'm not as fast as him. Like, I don't feel like I should hang out with him. So, and obviously motorcycling naturally comes with a lot of ego as well. So, there's a lot that kind of has to be tabled somewhere. That's also something that we try and do as well and promote, is like, leave your ego at home, because obviously that's also what makes you crash. That's also, it's not welcoming at the same time for other people.
Ironically, I think that on the online community is one way to help bridge that feeling of not wanting to show up somewhere alone. I've kind of found that because I'm part of a few Discord servers now that are sort of motorcycle related. And one in particular has an Arizona-based room, or whatever they call them on Discord, channel. I don't know. And a lot of the folks there, they come into this Discord server as individuals who may not know anyone else on the server. Then they start talking, they move over into the Arizona room, and then they're talking more there. And the next thing you know, they're planning meetups, and they're total strangers who are now going to go show up somewhere and ride.
Yeah.
So I think that can help take the edge off, because you're right. A lot of people do have a lot of anxiety about just showing up somewhere alone, especially if you're new to that hobby or to that lifestyle. Like you don't want to be the guy or girl who's making the social faux pas and not have anyone around you to kind of be your support.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely digital outlets, especially in the internet. And it's weird. It's like, it's almost like marketed by word of mouth. It's actually kind of hard to find sort of communities like that, even online. Cause you're just like searching, and it's like, oh, it's like the Discord server. I actually had no idea like some of this stuff existed. But I like, man, I know there's like the Bay Area Writers Forums, which is a good resource, but also I think there's also a lot of just long timers on there as well. That is also intimidating at the same time, which is why I don't post that often there. I think online for sure, there could be a better presence, for like welcoming new people, new writers. Reddit's been a great forum. There's a Bay Writers Reddit, there's a new writers Reddit. And so some people post about just getting help, and just the stupidest thing. Not stupid, just like the smallest things. Like, how do I put gas in my tank?
Yep.
Like, like in a car, you just put it in, and it's like, but with a motorcycle, you don't really have that luxury to just stick it. You got to do the thing depending what state you are. And, some people think it's a stupid question, but it's, it's totally not,
Yeah.
A lot of people are wondering.
Anything's an easy or stupid or whatever, however someone wants to phrase it, question if you've got a lot of experience with it, But if you have no experience, and there's really no such thing as a stupid question. Now, I feel like in life there's some lazy questions, where if someone, for instance, I'm in a number of groups, and I'm a big cigar fan, and so I'm in these cigar groups, and you get people who come into the group and they ask the same questions over and over and over that have been answered. It's like if they'd have done a single search in the group, they would have found 50 different posts answering their question. And like you were talking about earlier about how you see, the same post from someone over and over and you get tuned out basically. And I think it's the same thing when you get the same sort of question or same post type every single day, where it's like, well, you start losing engagement with the group because it's almost becoming spam, right?
Exactly.
There's no new content to engage with, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, I feel like there are some lazy questions. Now, sometimes, you may ask a lazy question just because you don't even realize that it's such a popular question to ask. But I tend to be an over researcher in general anyway. So for me, I'm always like, I can't believe someone didn't Google that, when they ask things.
Let me help you.
There used to be a website, I don't know if it still exists, where it was called like, let me Google that for you.
Yes, it still exists.
Right.
Yeah.
I used to love that thing. I would go and I would post a link and then they'd click it and it would just be like the letters
Google
typing
search.
into Google, but it animated, right? I was animate the whole like question being put in there. And then
I only know that because someone was trolling somebody at work because someone did exactly that. It was just ask a question like, oh, let me Google that for you.
I tend to have a lot more patience now. I think as you get older, hopefully, your maturity gets, develops further and your patience develops. But definitely when I was younger, I would get more annoyed with people who just wouldn't ever look for stuff for themselves.
Yeah.
And I know that I was probably part of the reason some people get intimidated asking questions in like group forums and stuff. So now I kind of feel bad looking back at it. But that's why I do my best now to be as, patient. I'll answer a lot of questions like that in the different groups I'm in.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
This is what it is. And then that way we can all be done with with that particular question and move on.
Move on. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something that we all need to sort of be very conscious about. Not everybody knows the same thing, and obviously, someone's got to start somewhere. So I think patience definitely helps with a lot of new folks, because as much as someone could search for something, like as you mentioned, there are lazy ways, and then there are proactive ways, and you can't really expect people to just be active all the time, because it's the easiest way. The least path of resistance is just to ask somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it goes for everything. Yeah.
So to get back to kind of online communities, though, I will say one of the things that I've discovered, because I just started writing in April. And, so I've been kind of looking for the different community aspect of this whole motorcycle thing as well. And one of the reasons I've engaged so much with YouTube was that the community actually ended up being really helpful and friendly. And some of like the Discord servers that I've found and some of the friends that I've made in the motorcycle community have all stemmed from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So it really, it bolstered my idea of, hopping onto YouTube and trying to have my own presence on YouTube, because I already was interested in it. And the fact that I was getting such good engagement with people and having so much fun talking and getting on people's lives and things like that. So. Yeah,
there's a lot of great content creators out there with motorcycling. Yeah, I saw you interviewed Doodle, Megan Stark. We've touched base with her too. There's a lot of just great content creators that just isn't really about motorcycling. It's just more of like the human aspect of it, I guess. And like culturally. So, and it's good to see their sort of localized views on how things are out there, how it is for, women, how it is for just, minorities or whatever. And, I find myself watching, these videos on YouTube just all the time, just randomly, because it's like, oh yeah, let's just see what's going on there. And, so, I'm really glad like there's a lot of just sort of dedicated content creators out there, just because I think it really helps sort of build that. Even at a global scale, I know they've gotten some international sort of recognition as well here and there. So which is really good.
Yeah. So you said you met Kiana back in high school, essentially, not in the same school, but through friends. Yep. And now did you both work at the same Starbucks, or were you guys working at different Starbucks?
No, different Starbucks. At the time when we met, it was one of those things where it's just like, when you're trying to like talk to them and, say, hey, you want to go out sometime. And so I kind of mentally, it was like a fine line of just like we can't be at the same job or like we can't work at the same store.
That's smart.
Yeah. So yeah, different Starbucks. Okay. But I think sharing sort of our the same interests was very, very funny and fun.
So, but I'm curious, when you started working for Starbucks, was it because you'd already had an interest in coffee, or was it because you had an interest in Kiana, who had an interest in coffee?
So that's a very interesting question. Yeah, so she worked there before I ever touched a Starbucks. And I think it was one thing to where we both found out at the same time. So I'd say like, I like coffee. So I guess you could say, to answer that question, I was more interested in the coffee side. And I was like, Starbucks looks like a cool place. Like, obviously they pay decent with benefits of blah, 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 whatever. And it's coffee. And then it was shortly after to where I did realize that she also worked there. So it was kind of like a funny coincidence. So, and that's where it kind of started to ramp up from there.
Okay. So was your first date at a coffee shop?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't really call it a date. It's so weird to think about how like people would like hang out back then compared to now. Cause it's just like, you'd always hang out with a group of friends and, you know, sometimes you get too nervous. So you bring your friend with you as a third wheel. And then you start to go on like one-on-one dates. But a lot of the times, like more than half the time, it was at a coffee shop, which was a Starbucks. And then obviously like go out and have dinner somewhere and whatnot. For a while, we used to live about an hour and a half away. So I lived in a town called Rhodesville, or I should say Lincoln, which is neighboring Roseville, Sacramento Valley area. And she would live in Sassoon, which is in Fairfield. So she also moved to Sacramento for college. So we would be 2 hours away. I'm sorry, not Sacramento, San Francisco. And, you know, at that point we would be, 2 hours away. And so we wouldn't see each other throughout the week. And then, she would come from San Francisco all the way to Sacramento Valley every weekend for like a day, just to like hang out and stuff, and vice versa every weekend. So for a while it was that way, and then we moved in with each other after she graduated, and so I went back to school. So I moved out with my parents, went back to school in the Bay Area, and we would live with each other ever since. And we were like apartment hop on all over Oakland. That's kind of when all that started.
So I thought on her LinkedIn page, I saw that she went to California State in Sacramento.
Yes. So she went to both.
Okay.
Yeah. So she went to SF State at first, and then she finished off in Sacramento.
Okay. So then did she end up getting her degree in theater then?
Theater. Yep. She ended up finishing in theater. And she used to work in a technical stage technical director. So, and a lot of it in production, backstage production. Mm-hmm. So she would sort of like build the props and work with the stage masters and whatnot. And so she would be sort of the back of the house to help run all the stuff.
And so what did you end up going to school for?
So I went to school at a place called Expression College in Emeryville for audio engineering. And that sort of came across just because I've always been sort of a music inspired, audio inspired sort of production. I would like record my own music at home, even living with my parents. I would like make music, like electronic music, and I'd have all these like MIDI controllers and whatnot. And then I also did sort of like live music production. I'd make electronic music and I'd perform it live a while ago. And so I was just like, well, let's kind of dig into this a little deeper. So the, Expression, who are now owned by SAE, they taught audio engineering, they taught motion graphics, they taught visual arts, like 3D animation. And I think they just stemmed out to video game audio. But I went for audio production. So learning how to mix and master and record things on, $3,000 microphones and like big audio consoles that were done, like Led Zeppelin recorded their second album on this thing, and stuff like that. So a lot of it was just sort of like a novelty. But the actual learning the concepts of it was really inspiring and really fun. But it was an intense program because it was a 2.5-year program for a 4-year bachelor's. So it was an accelerated program. And I would have classes where I would take 6 to 7 hours of lecture throughout the day, go back home and come back at 6 p.m. to have a lab for another 6 hours. So I'd be at school for 18 hours in a day. So it was a pretty rough schedule, but I think the way they sort of tailored the class made it interesting and engaging. So where it's like you don't even actually think about time. And luckily I had some financial help sort of to pay rent and whatnot, and then I would have a part-time job working at a cafe just sort of down the street, sort of help with some expenses. But yeah, I did it in a little less than 2.5 years. And that's where my career in AV started right after. And it's funny because going to school like Expression, they sort of market having this dream of working on really big movies or really big video games and doing large productions. And then people graduate and they end up working on a construction site. It's like, wait, what just happened? Because my first job out of college was with an audiovisual integrator. And the first thing that they do is just sort of as your entry level step in is, be an installer. So even though your title is audiovisual, you're stuck in a construction site pulling audio cables and data cables, from one ceiling to another, and you're on a ladder and you're like, wait, this isn't anything audiovisual at all. And so a lot of folks really got discouraged, right out of college, and, going into AV. And so they would not try. And, some people did, a lot of people did succeed. A lot of people did not succeed, going into production, live sound, doing more of the creative parts of it. But it has been, and it still is such a competitive industry, that there is not enough work out there for the amount of technicians and creatives that are out there. And, when it comes to video games and movies, they're always going to go out to who does the best work and not the kid who just graduated college, So it was super competitive. And I sort of bit the bullet and sort of accepted that reality and, tended to go to more of a realistic long-term plan for myself. So I stuck it out, doing construction and audiovisual for a year in different corporate sites. And then obviously stemmed up from there. And I guess you could say it kind of paid off, which was good. Things aren't too bad. I work for a tech company doing IT in San Francisco, running their audiovisual program. So it's not too bad. Alva, I do wish, looking back, what if I did work on a really big video game or a really big movie? That would have been awesome, but it also would have been very short term, and I'd be hustling for the next gig right after.
Yeah. Sorry, my cat is
all good.
coming for attention.
I'm waiting until my cat hops on my table.
She sleeps most of the day. This is the cat, my very first cat ever. Her name's Aiko, and she was one of those cats that got abandoned during the housing crash. Mm. I think that someone just left their house to the bank and couldn't take their cat, and she just ended up being a stray in my neighborhood. But anyway, so she normally sleeps all day, but she gets these small bursts where she's like, I haven't seen him in a while. Let's go make him pet me.
Let's go bother him.
Yeah.
Oh, he's doing something important. Let's go bug him.
Pretty much. When I first got her, I was going to school and she would lay on my homework all the time.
Oh my God.
You'd just come over. I'd be at the desk, trying to do my homework, and she would just come and lay right on the pages.
Typical cat.
Oh yeah, definitely. Which by the way, this that I'm drinking here is your guys' coffee.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I'll have to apologize if there's cream in it. I'm
No.
doing this diet, and I started it before I ordered any of your guys' coffee. And so you have to like plan out the macronutrients that you're taking in for each meal. And so I've got like a certain amount of fat that I have to consume for breakfast.
Interesting.
And, you know, I don't really have any other fat sources that I want to have for breakfast besides a little bit of cream.
Yeah.
Coffee. So it's like that, or like melt some butter in it. And I'm not going to do that.
You are allowed to enjoy it however you want.
Well, my own view before dieting was always if the coffee was good, I like to have it without cream. And if it's only so-so, I would put cream in it. And if it's terrible, then I put cream and sugar. Yeah,
cream and sugar.
Yeah.
If you end up going to a Denny's or like a gas station, you kind of have you're kind of forced to at that point.
Yeah, it doesn't even taste like coffee at that point. You know?
But I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're drinking it.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I was concerned because I love coffee, but I'm a terrible connoisseur, I guess you would say, because the coffee that I tend to like, it would be considered over roasted. Where people complain about Starbucks having burnt beans. I love that. You know? Yeah. Like to me that I really enjoy that. And
that's funny you mention it because, you know, we just recently had a conversation, you know, me and Ken were just talking about like Pete's and Starbucks, like how they have everything's dark. Everyone wants dark. And I'm like, well, that's not a bad thing, you know, because people actually want that stuff. So there's no harm in, you know, trying to shape your coffee and force people to drink of what's right, you know, because there is no right answer. It's just how we currently make it and how we think it's good. Like, sure, there's like, it could taste like honey. It could taste like lavender. It could taste however you want it. But if people just want dark coffee because they know that's how it tastes and that's what they want, and that's what they're used to, you know, that's okay. So, yeah.
Well, it's actually there's a couple different reasons for me. Number one, a lighter roast tends to give me palpitations, you know, because of the higher caffeine content. And I prefer to be able to drink a couple of cups a day. But if I drink a lighter roast, medium's about as light as I can get and have a cup of coffee, because anything lighter than that, and I mean, immediately I start getting heart palpitations.
Yeah.
And that makes coffee not enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, and then additionally, sometimes even the medium roast, it's like I can have one cup, but if I try to have my second cup, I start getting palpitations.
Yep.
You know, and I'm a creature of habit, and I like to have 2 cups of coffee a day.
Yeah.
And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is that I typically prefer more of the bitter flavor of coffee than a sour flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the lighter, more, I don't know, connoisseur-y way of roasting leaves kind of a sour taste to the coffee.
Yep.
And I don't know. I don't like sour as much as I like bitter. So.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. And there's definitely an area where it's just like, you know, this stuff barely doesn't even taste like coffee anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I prefer sort of the bitterness as well. And it's so funny you mentioned heart palpitations, because I've had coffee where it's like super like lightly roasted and, you know, and it's good. But yeah, after like a cup, I'm like, I don't know, like I'm like shaking. I'm like, I don't know if I can breathe. So yeah, we try and avoid that, you know, and there's a lot of coffee companies that do that. And it's
I mean, you guys struck, I think, a good balance, because I can taste a hint of the sourness in your coffee. So I think the coffee connoisseurs are going to be like, oh, they didn't over roast their beans, right? But then people like me aren't going, oh God, this is another cup of sour coffee, you know? And I get it. A lighter roast, you can taste more of the different flavors or whatever. But even, for instance, with my cigars, people are always talking about what they can taste in the cigar, and I'm always just like, it just tastes like smoke, and that's what I want it to taste like.
So do cigars have like taste notes too?
Oh my god!
Really? Okay.
Yes. And then people, you know, they talk about the whole retrohale, and it's just blowing it out your nose, right? Because so much of taste is smell.
Yeah.
But with cigars, you don't inhale, right? So you just bring the smoke into your mouth.
Yeah.
And if you're not retrohaling, then you're not getting all of the taste of the cigar tobacco, because realistically, I mean, it's a handcrafted product, and they're trying to, like, they have people who are master blenders, and they're trying to blend for a certain flavor. And there are people out there who claim that they can taste things like black pepper and nutmeg and you know, anise and all this stuff. And you know, maybe there are some people with like super palates who can taste that stuff.
Yep.
I can't taste any of that.
Yeah.
And I'm really straight up about it too. And I'm just like, you know, I can taste spicy and I can taste earthy.
Yeah.
You know, bitterness, you can taste bitter, like some of the real basics, but people who are able to pull out like, oh, this is like the flavor of an almond that's been toasted for 20 minutes, you know, under, you know, 350-degree heat. Like, I don't get it. But,
sorry, I have to, my dogs are howling right now.
okay.
Benson, stop. Okay. All right. We need to close this door. You
They
guys
just need some
out.
attention, or?
Yeah. Or they hear something and it's just setting them off. All right. Everyone outside. 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 Come on, then. All right.
I had to lock one of my cats up because she's very vocal. Actually, I've got two cats that are really vocal, but one is already sleeping. The other one was just walking around the desk going, you know, so I had to put her in the other room.
Yeah. Get out of here. You're being white.
Yeah. If you listen to my Brandon Picasso episode, for like the first 15, 20 minutes, my cat Lucy is just meowing and meowing and meowing. And I'm so used to it that I didn't notice it at first until I was listening to it back editing. And I was like, oh my God, Lucy's in the background, just like talking up the storm.
It would have ruined it.
Yeah. It's part of owning pets, right?
Oh yeah. And being at home and all that. Yeah, I know it's funny, like being on calls, even at work, it's just like, my colleagues got kids and just screaming in the background, and they just like, they're not even phased.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Like you can mute, but I guess you don't really notice that there's sound behind you.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are kind of understanding that you can't really keep kids quiet to a lot of extent, you know. I mean,
yeah.
Back when I was getting raised, my dad might smack us and be like, quiet, you know.
Yep.
But in 2020, that sounds like, you know,
you're
recording of smacking your kids. That's a good way to go to jail.
Yep. You would be retweeted a couple million times.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating for hitting your kids. Anyone listening to this, I'm just saying the time.
Hey, I'm Filipino, and you know, being raised in an Asian family, that is just the norm, you know. And obviously, that's just me being stereotypical and biased. But it's very interesting. Yeah, it's like and I would always tease my friends and one of our you know, Filipino. It's like, oh, you're gonna whip out the belt, or you're gonna take off the slipper, and you know, go to your room, or else I'll blah 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 blah. It's just funny, just growing up and seeing how you know, we would get disciplined and stuff. It's like, oh, maybe that's why. Maybe I did work, you know, end up being okay because I got slapped in my butt with a slipper.
You know, I think every experience shapes us for better or for worse. And at the end of the day, as long as people aren't going too far, I feel like it's not that much of a problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, well, what's that line, you know, because kids are like animals. I mean, to some extent when they're super young, right? I mean, they just don't understand things. And so if they don't, I had a friend, and I'm kind of regurgitating her words because I don't have children, but she does. And we were having this discussion one day about, because I wasn't really that anti-spanking, you know, I'm like, whatever, spank your kids, don't spank your kids, they're yours. But she was kind of making a point that if the kid is too young to understand what you're talking to them, like trying to explain to them about why they shouldn't do something or whatever, why do you expect them to understand that the reason that you're hitting them?
Yeah. Right.
And I was like, okay, that's kind of a valid point, I suppose. Fair. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So you said that you are Filipino descent. Have you been to the Philippines or?
Yes. Yep. Once, a long time ago when I was, I was like 5. So a lot of it was just very distant memories. And I went with my immediate family, and we have extended family on my dad's side who lives there. And my dad was born and raised in the Philippines. And he immigrated to the US when he was, 17 or 18 for work. Mm-hmm. But we still have family there. And my relatives still visit, every so often. But I would love to go back and see my family sometime in the future, just because I know Philippines has changed quite a bit since I've been there. But unfortunately, I don't think for the better, I want to say, as I know they're going through some hardships, especially with their president right now. But they're doing well. My dad obviously loves going back to the Philippines and, sort of seeing how things are back there, and just like culturally and just sort of like the living aspect of it is just so, it's homey, it's very welcoming. Filipinos, I think, generally are just very hospitable. You go into if you go into like a nursing home or hospital, half the staff is like Filipino, and it's funny. And there's that joke that people always say, like, why are all nurses Filipino? It's like, well, because I think we're just naturally hospitable. But it's just it's just something to always look forward to. If we ever do go there, just how welcoming it is. And I think it's the same way with a lot of like Southeast Asia too. We've been to Vietnam, and everyone was super nice and everything. Everyone was very like family first. So it was good to see some of that going over there.
So hopefully I'm not mixing up my countries, but I think in the Philippines is the language Tagalog or
Tagalog. Yeah,
Tagalog. Thank you.
Yeah, Tagalog.
And then
that's the main language.
I think that they speak some English fairly commonly out there too, right?
Yep.
So do you speak the language or?
No. My dad does. Yeah, he's fluent. And all of my dad's side, he's fluent. My mom can understand a little bit. So she can translate something like that, but she doesn't speak. But no one, I don't speak Tagalog. I would love to learn a second language. But obviously that takes time.
Oh man, I have been trying so hard to learn a second language. I started out trying to learn German when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And then as an adult, I actually went to ASU, which is Arizona State University out here, for a few years to learn Japanese. And then my girlfriend is from Mexico, so I've been trying to learn Spanish recently. Mm-hmm. And I just, as much as I love languages, I feel like I'm just language dumb, no matter how much I practice, my memory sucks.
It definitely helps to be ingrained in the environment too.
Yeah. I'm trying to encourage my sister who's got a baby now, like get her started speaking another language. And I'm always sad when I hear someone whose family speaks another language doesn't teach their kids. And I'm like, oh, yeah, such a missed opportunity,
I know.
Anyway, I don't know how you feel about it, but
no, I agree. I think we've, as English is sort of like the world language, actually in a lot of cases, I feel like there might be a time in the future where that might no longer be the case because, as other countries as they evolve, and obviously there's Spanish and German and all these other big languages, and there's a lot of people in the US that I know that just want to speak another language. So it's interesting to see how, classes before, it was like a requirement to learn Spanish or French or German because of there's, I don't know if it was just like more opportunity to speak those languages somewhere else that's more important from like a cultural society perspective. But, I think as more cultures start to be infused in the US and even in other countries, like we shouldn't be limited to just those 3 languages to learn in school. And maybe that's now changing, because now that we're all online, there'll be more opportunities for that. So, but I agree. Like, I think learning another language is something that is taken for granted in a lot of ways. Cause you don't realize how much you need until you get older.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the studies have shown, people who learn a second language, their brains somehow function better, and it just gives you an advantage, in life and in school. And it's like, why not? Why not get your kids learning a second language?
Yeah.
From an early age when it's easy,
Yep, exactly.
Versus as an adult when it's like everything's baked in and I'm, staring at, flashcards, or I use these Pimsleur audio, lessons to learn Spanish, and I'm trying to remember everything that I learned in the last lesson. And, so
I used Duolingo a lot, and
I tried it and it glitched.
Really?
It glitched, and I reached a question where you could not pick the right answer. So I picked every answer, because it's multiple choice for a lot of them.
Yep.
And I picked every one, and it would keep telling me I was wrong. And so I finally just deleted it off my phone because I was so frustrated I couldn't get past this one section. So.
Yeah. That's annoying. That, and I just know I know Duolingo yells at you if you're not using the app.
Like, if you have the notifications turned on,
yeah.
Which sometimes you need that, right? Like, people get lazy or they get tired, and
just need that nudge.
Yeah. So, did the motorcycles come before coffee, or did coffee come before motorcycles? When did you start getting into motorcycles?
Coffee came before motorcycles. And I started riding in 2018, summer of 2018. And it all sort of stemmed. I never would have thought about riding motorcycles at all. Back then, I never even thought about it. Like when I was 18, in my early 20s, or just even before I turned 30, I see a motorcycle and just be like, whatever, it's loud, they go fast, I'm sure it's going to hurt if he gets into an accident. Obviously just the general thoughts of, someone, a bypasser. And it wasn't until, early 2018 to where, and all of this is, so I will say motorcycling was driven by commute, for me. And the only reason why I thought about motorcycling was because it was so hard to get to the office in San Francisco. Because I've born and raised in the East Bay all my life, and traffic going in San Francisco was just getting worse and worse. BART was becoming less of an option just because of the crime and the sanitary aspect of it. And it was just becoming overcrowded, and it just wasn't really a fun, viable option that I wanted to consider. Driving is obviously out the window. So it's like, well, what's the other option? It's like, oh, well, you can lane split with motorcycling, and, you can zip in and out in the city. You get to be in the carpool lane. There's all these benefits for commute. And so it's just like, why haven't I been doing this? So that was the early summer of 2018 where I started to really look into it and you see what it's all about. And the first thing I was just like, well, I don't really want to go all out, because it's just going to be for commuting. I need to get on the highway. It needs to be fast enough to get on the highway. And, and I initially was looking at scooters. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to, look into scooters, and Vespas, they go up to 300 cc's. Okay, so this is big enough to go, 65 miles per hour, steadily across the Bay Bridge and, whatnot. It's like, okay, so let's look into that. So I started window shopping online, and, went to a dealership just to poke around. And then, I was like, okay, so how do I get my license? I was like, okay, so I could either just ride it and take a test, a riding test at the DMV, take a written test and done, or I can take the MSF class. And then I was looking at the requirements. I was like, well, if I want to ride a large Vespa, I need to have my motorcycle license anyways. So I took the MSF class, and, you know, I started off, it was a Kawasaki Eliminator 125. And they had that, or they had the Grom, like a 150 Grom. And, you know, from an aesthetics perspective, it's just like, oh man, I want to like ride a cruiser, you know, get the vintage aesthetic feel. Cause Grom, that's like too, like, it was too, gosh, I was still associating things of like modern bikes to like Rice Rockets, and, you know, sort of like Scooty Boys with that armor, you know, all that. Right. So I was like looking for more like the vintage feel. So I was like, yeah, Kawasaki Eliminator, that's cruiser style. Looks awesome. So I rode that. And when I was like doing the laps around the parking lot, around the cones and doing it with the instructors, it was just like, man, this is pretty fun, you know? And like, I never would have thought like, cause I rode a scooter. My sister had a 125 Yamaha, Vino, and I rode that thing around the block, and, you know, it was fun, but it wasn't like amazing. Like, you know, it was fun to just zip around, but like being, you know, feeling the engagement of how much is involved with riding a motorcycle. It's like, wow, like I feel like I'm controlling a spaceship or something, you know? So I found that really engaging and, you know, and really fun to just run the parking lot. So that was kind of like what really reeled me in. So, you know, I passed the course, passed the DMV tests, and proceeded to buy my first motorcycle as opposed to a scooter, which was a 2010 Triumph T100, which is a big bike, you know, especially for a first time bike, which I still have. It's now become my project bike that I'm now modding constantly.
How do you mod something in California?
You just don't tell. You just don't say. No, I don't ride it on the street. But you know, it being my first bike, I was just like, you know, I definitely had the confidence. I was just like, yeah, I can ride this, and you know, like I'm sure I'm going to drop it, but I'll be really careful. And you know, and like the second or third time I took it out of my driveway, I low-sided making a right turn out of my drive, like right outside my driveway into this like loose gravel. And I'm like, this sucks. And, you know, obviously it's a learning curve. I was bummed out and just kind of like sat there for a minute. But, you know, onwards and upwards. And I proceeded to drop it another like 9 times after that. But every time you drop it, it's just you learn from it.
See, this is why my very first mod and my only mod so far has been an engine guard.
Yes. Actually, the guy at my dealership when I bought it was like, you need some sliders. Like, go get some sliders. I'm like, okay. And thank goodness.
Yes.
I would have been screwed.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, I think back to the time, and this was sort of my thought process with what to buy and what to upgrade or mod or whatever. I think back to when I first started driving a car, you know, and I was 16 and I got into like 3 accidents the first year that I was driving.
Mm.
And obviously the consequences are much lower when you're in a car. And I thought to myself, you know I've been driving for a long time, but I've not been riding a motorcycle. So I'm going to go with something smallish, you know, and I'm going to put some crash bars on it. And don't get too sad if I drop it. You know, like if I set that bar in my own head that I'm never going to drop it, then I'm just going to be frustrated and disappointed. But if I go into it saying, you know what, you're new, you're going to drop it, then when it happens, it's easy to be like, well, I knew this was going to happen.
Yep.
No biggie.
Yeah. So, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's a bummer when you buy a new bike and you're like, don't drop it. Don't drop it. I have 2 other bikes, and they're all Triumphs. I'm a Triumph fanboy. It's a Street Triple and a Tiger 1200. And, you know, I took my Tiger 1200 out to the dirt with a couple of friends. We were going camping, and this was up in like the Big Sur, like mountain hills and stuff. And man, it was fun going up the hill, but it was a big lesson learned of like, this, you get to understand how the bike truly rides in certain situations. And I learned that the hard way on my 1200, going through up a steep sandy hill on stock street tires.
Stock tires?
Yeah. It took 3 of us to pick it up twice. So if that gives you an idea.
Yeah. So
yeah,
have you since gone out and gotten some knobbies, or are you just avoiding going off, or
currently avoiding going off right now? I've, when we went to Oregon a couple of weeks ago, we took the Tiger 1200 out, on our road trip. And that was just a complete touring bike. It's got all the technology built into it to make the comfortable ride. And I think that's, I kind of saw Triumph. I see where they're trying to tailor some of their marketing, because it's just like adventure bikes are cool, like, big board adventure bikes, you can take them off road, you can take them touring, you do all these things. I'm like, well, you kind of got to pick one or the other, because they're not going to perform as well in both spectrums. So I've learned that the 1200 is more of a road touring bike as opposed to a dirt bike. And if I were to ride dirt, I'd probably get a legit dirt bike, and have fun with that and not be afraid of throwing it in the dirt. Yeah.
You'd be surprised what appropriate tires will do for basically any bike.
Yeah.
I think, I follow people who do these long trips, and, one girl that I follow, she's riding a Fireblade.
Wow.
Yeah. Through Europe and down into Africa. And, just getting the right tires can even make that possible. And that's, a sport bike, right?
Yeah.
And then you see people who do the ADV bikes, and they put the knobbies on, and then suddenly they have a lot more versatility.
Yep.
And on the flip side, it's like, for instance, I interviewed this guy, Yoon, and once his knobbies had been worn off, all of a sudden his bike wasn't really good in the dirt or in the gravel or wherever, right? He was having so much more trouble keeping it where it's supposed to be, upright and moving forward, Yep.
You're fishtailing out everywhere.
Yeah. It's just, So, I think any bike can be modified appropriately. If you look at what Harley's doing right now with the long way up with Ewan McGregor, they're taking live wires and converting them to be basically adventure bikes.
Right. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. I think actually
very interesting.
I think Harley's next evolution is going to be on more of the adventure side. The same thing sort of Triumph is doing, right? Like, I think they're going to start more actively focusing on kind of off-road type things. And I think it aligns well with sort of their mantra of freedom.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to evolve Harley in a new direction, it's got to sort of stay aligned somewhat with their current ideology.
Yep. So. Yeah. And it seems like all these manufacturers are really trying to build bikes that tailor to every riding style. So, and I think that's their sort of way to try and reel people in. It's like, well, I want to do this, but at least I can do this as well. Like, yeah, of course I'll buy it because I can do everything because they told me it could. And then you realize you can't. But I think that's what they're trying to achieve, is to do, and I'll do everything bike.
And I think that they realize that N+1 is a thing.
Yeah.
In that vein, what's your next bike?
Oh my goodness.
Is it a dirt bike?
Probably. Yeah, probably. Well, because my street triple, I'm converting it into a dedicated track bike. So
of course you have to have a track bike.
What's that?
I said, of course you have to have a track bike, right?
I have to have a track bike. Because I was like, well, maybe I should trade in my street triple for more of like a dedicated, like, an R1 or an R6, Yamaha R6 or something. And I'm like, well, I can either like trade it in and still have to pay a chunk of money for something that may not perform the way I like it to. Or, I can just, shape my street triple into something that I would want it to be. And while I understand and know, because I've been riding for a while now, so I kind of stuck to that. So, that one's for the track and sort of like my fun bike. And my Tiger is definitely for like the long haul highway ride. But still can't really manage the dirt that well on most of it, just because it's really heavy. And gosh, that thing weighs like almost 600 pounds. And obviously not viable in sort of the dirt stuff. So I think a dirt bike would be the next thing if I were to ever get one. I'm looking at KTM's. KTM's got a great lineup of dirt bikes. On the flip side, I've been really interested on the electric motorcycle industry. Zero's been putting out some interesting stuff. And having a battery powered, very low maintenance type of bike just sounds really intriguing to have, and seeing how that runs in the long term. But I just personally, for me, I just feel like sort of the range, and I think it's always been a concern for a lot of people getting electric motorcycles, is the range piece of it, where it's like, well, it takes like 8 hours for a full charge or whatever if you just plug it into a normal outlet, and you can only get like 125 miles out of a full charge. So you can't really go really anywhere except sort of back and forth commuting. And I think until that evolves and it's, they have some sort of solution where you can like just charge your battery on the go with like an external reservoir or something like that. I think that's going to hold people back with buying those, but would love to own one someday.
I've thought about the whole electric motorcycle thing, and personally, to me, the issues I have with it but they sort of conflict with what I enjoy about motorcycles. You were talking about earlier how, when you ride a motorcycle, it almost feels like you're riding a spaceship or something, And for me, I really love an analog experience. I love shifting gears, I love the sound of the engine revving. And I mean, I have a Harley, so I like the sound of my exhaust as I'm, and believe me, it's a stock exhaust. I'm not like one of those guys who's like, the first thing I did was throw a fucking exhaust, right? But I like the way it sounds. I like the way it smells. Even living in Phoenix, having the heat come off the engine, like feeling like there's something there. The vibrations, I love the vibrations. I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, this is so smooth. Like my bike, you hardly can feel it. To me, that all sounds boring. Yeah. Anytime someone uses the word smooth, I think boring. Whether it's cigars, coffee, scotch, like whatever it is in life, when someone tells me something is smooth, I'm like, yeah, it's not for me. So like I love all that analog feel, and so the thought
of what year is your Harley again?
2019. So it still has the rubber mounted engine. It's not as shaky as the old ones, but I can still feel it. It's like I'm sitting at a light, I can feel the bike under me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a speed demon, so I don't really care about speed. And I think that's kind of where the electric bikes will excel. They've got so much torque, so immediate, right? And that's why I think personally, people who complain about the range, it's like, well, sport bikes aren't really that comfortable to ride very far anyway. Like, do you want to go 200 miles on a sport bike? I don't. My back would be killing me by the time I was done, at that point, a sport bike's designed to go fast, not to go comfortably. Yep. And in that regard, electric bikes seem like they'd be the perfect fit, because you get all that super quick torque right there. And then, you can go as fast as you want, because you don't have to worry about how fast you can shift. So you don't need a quick shifter or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like throttle on, throttle off. The learning curve to operate and making the motorcycle move is going to be super short, because you don't have to worry about shifting. That's a good point. I think they've got a lot of pluses. On the negative side, in safety, I know people have this argument all the time about whether loud pipes save lives or whatever. And I don't know. Like, I'm not a scientist and I've never studied it. All I can tell people is from my experience. Before I ever rode a motorcycle, whenever I would hear a motorcycle, I would look to see where it was at, And so from someone who just started riding, I still have a really clear experience interacting with motorcycles as a driver. And my own experience is that when I would hear one, I would look for one. If I didn't hear it, I might not see you.
Yep.
So I don't know. I
think have you lane split it at all on? You're in Arizona.
Yeah, it's not legal out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, California, and people get crazy over here. It's just like, I should say it's crazy because there's so many cars, on the interstate, especially during rush hour. And it's just like, when you're commuting, fortunately there's a lot of nice people and a lot of nice drivers that, they're constantly like moving over, for people that ride through. And then you get those riders who, like, if they don't move, they just get really upset, just for like for what? Like, it's not, I don't think you have a right to lane split, even though you might think you do, in a lot of cases, people don't get to do this, but here we do. So I don't know why you're mad.
Yeah, I mean, I get why they're mad. It's like if you buy a bike so that you can lane split and you don't have to sit in the traffic with everyone. And then at the same time, depending on if your bike is air cooled or liquid cooled, you don't want to necessarily be sitting stopped in traffic and letting your bike bake in the heat. I mean, I kind of get it, but at the same time, you're right. It's like everyone's sharing the road together. Even if the cars aren't moving over, it may not be malevolent. It just might be that they're stopped in traffic, so they're looking at their phone for a minute or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, they're going 0 miles an hour. What do you want them to do? Yeah.
But lane splitting has been, so far in my riding experience has been good. It's been nice. Like, the aggressiveness of people like isn't really apparent, at least here in the Bay. Might be different elsewhere. And that's also sort of like some of the encouragement with like a golden hour is just like, this is why riding's awesome, because you get to do all these things. You get to places faster and more efficiently. And, definitely being efficient is key.
Well, yeah, it's a good selling point, I'd say. I don't know if you saw that I interviewed Star Bobber, but she's down in Fresno or up in Fresno, down because Fresno's below you guys, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, she started riding motorcycles because she couldn't get any parking at her school. Yep. And meanwhile, they had motorcycle parking, and these folks were just like riding right up to the door, parking their motorcycle and going right to class. And then she's like driving around this parking lot looking for spaces all the time. Yeah. And so it just out of sheer convenience, she got into motorcycles. And I just saw the video that you guys posted on Golden Hour, and I know it's not a new video, but it's the video of that guy who's like a Brit or something, and he's talking about
Moto Geo.
Yeah, like lane splitting and like, hey, look, guys, like you could be riding right now, right through the middle of this traffic and not stuck. Yeah, if you had a motorcycle, so get on the ball, get a motorcycle,
be somewhere, do something better with your time. Yeah. No, I love all his videos, and all he does is eat burgers and ride motorcycles. It's kind of like his go-to. But I always think that's interesting. Where it's just like what motivates people to actually start riding is to gain those conveniences for the thing that they have to do. But if they didn't need that convenience, would they still be riding? So I think it's a lot how there has to be a need to go that route, as opposed to, there's less people wanting to ride it because it's a motorcycle, but they have to resort to a motorcycle because they need it to achieve a certain thing. And it was the same thing for me. It's like I needed it for commuting, but now that we're in a pandemic and traffic isn't as bad, would I still have that need now? So it's like, would I still think about riding a motorcycle if I wasn't riding? So I find that interesting. So are you seeing some of the smoke where you are from California?
A little bit. I went riding last night or around sunset time, our time, and the sun is definitely a different color. But not to the extent that Oregon and California is getting it. How's it where you're at?
Terrible. You may have seen lots of pictures. I think it was Wednesday, where it was complete darkness because the smoke was so thick, and it was just like the I guess what happened is there was enough winds that day that swept some of the smoke on that first layer, that pushed all the smoke up high. And so it was just like this thick layer that just blocked all the sunlight. Now that the winds have died down, a lot of that smoke is now dropping back to earth. So now there's like soot and smoke everywhere. And you can barely see half a mile ahead of you, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everyone's staying inside. No one's walking their dogs or anything.
Well, good, because that can't be good for them to be breathing in, right?
Yeah. And I took my dog. My Benson won't go poo unless I walk him. So I kind of have to like walk him. And we went for a brisk walk yesterday, and it was just weird. Like out for like a couple minutes, and I can already feel it in my chest. I'm like, it sucks. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, you think too about how much more sensitive a dog's nose is, and you gotta wonder how he's feeling today too.
Yep. Put the air purifier next to him. Good.
Yeah, I saw some folks talking about having sensitive lungs or whatever for a variety of reasons, and one lady was showing like this hack where you can get an air filter and attach a fan.
Yeah.
And just blow the air through it and help clean out some of the air inside the house.
Yeah.
In addition to your air conditioning, because at least in my house, I've got 2 intakes for the air conditioner, and they each get, of course, a filter in them. So it stays relatively, okay in here. But Arizona is so dusty in general that it's impossible to get rid of all the dust. It's one of the first things that my ex-wife and I noticed when we moved to Arizona is it was impossible to keep things clean.
Interesting. Oh,
well,
man.
So when we first moved here, we didn't have any pets or anything, and we never wore shoes in the house, like all that kind of a deal. And we still were having like dust and dirt on everything.
Wow.
And, like I come from DC, where we would clean the house once a week and it would stay clean, most of that week. Here in Arizona, just from opening and closing the door, like in the dust in the air, it was like, you clean on Sunday, and by Tuesday, every surface in your house has like a little layer of dust on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And is that just from the
poor air quality? That's what it's from.
Really? Is it pretty poor there? Wow.
Yeah. They've got the brown cloud, they call it, out here in Arizona, and we're in a valley. And so the air kind of like settles down, and I live in technically Glendale. So I'm kind of on the outside of the valley. And so when I'll be driving into Phoenix, there's this one bridge that I take. It's like an overpass, and you can kind of see the city out in front of you, and you just see this thin haze of brown that's just like settling over everything.
Yeah.
And so they've got all these like dust control laws out here where if you're doing construction or doing anything that's going to be kicking up dirt, you have to have a giant water sprayer to spray everything, because otherwise the air quality just gets so bad so fast.
Wow, that's interesting. I wonder if that's sort of a common thing for like inland states or anything like that.
I don't know. I just know that we've got that combination of really dry. I mean, we live in a desert.
Yeah.
So out here, there's just constant dust anyway. We get dust storms. We call them haboobs that just like roll in and dump more dust on your town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
It's not fun.
So I'm taking the Bay Area for granted with all this smoke. Then is what's happening.
Well, I mean, it's like, it's all a trade-off, right? And we don't get earthquakes. So
it's very true. It's very true. We're just waiting for that big one to come any day.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about waking up in the middle of the night one day to my house shaking down.
Oh man.
So now you mentioned you guys wanted to have an actual space at some point with Golden Hour.
Yep.
Has the pandemic started making you guys have like a plan B as to like, because my own view is that with global warming and everything that's happening right now, whether you believe it's man-made or if it's a natural phenomenon, either way, whatever, temperature's going up. I think that this is not going to be the last pandemic that we experience in our lifetimes. Like a lot of people talk about it being sort of a 100-year pandemic, but I'm thinking personally, looking at everything, that it's going to happen more often. And I think businesses should, in my opinion, should be kind of considering like, hey, if your business depends on people being in a certain place at a certain time, you might struggle. And if you don't have some other way of bringing in some money on top of that, then you're putting yourselves like at risk. But I think you guys are starting from an online presence, right? So you seem to be building a customer base that's used to ordering from you guys, either online or I think that I saw some shops in the local area carry your guys' coffee as well, though. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, to going back of like, do we have a plan B? Sort of, and it's a bummer that, we're striving to create some space for communities when it's actually hard to do that in a pandemic. And so what does that actually look like? And I wonder what all these other cafes and restaurants and bars are actually thinking about when they think about building a community space. And, I think from a real estate and, building logistical perspective, I think a lot of that is going to change of how restaurants and places are going to get built out. It's like now everything is going to be there's going to be a pandemic code, like an earthquake code or like a fire code, So, there's a lot of design changes I think will be implemented just from a statewide, even countrywide level. And I'm really curious to see how that's going to pan out. And so how we've been kind of thinking about it is just like, well, how do we design a cafe to where, we can limit sort of some of these issues and mitigate some of these issues. And, and motorcycling kind of solves for a lot of that in itself, just as a hobby, since it's sort of like a one person hobby. And, be thinking about like indoor dining versus outdoor dining. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we can build like an outdoor type of cafe space and, not really have any seating and it's all bar seating. And, if you were to sort of gather and hang out, it's going to be at your own risk in like a parking lot or, something like that. We thought about going like mobile as well, building like a cart of some sort or buying like a Ural and, having the sidecar as a coffee espresso bar or something like that. And we'll be at farmers markets and whatnot. And, that was sort of another idea. But for now, I mean, being an online presence actually helped with, sort of building that community just online and digitally. So, if and when we do open that sort of physical presence, at least we'll have some customers to tailor to, and that they'll know that we exist, as opposed to just sort of like, hey, we're open, and we got to worry about like now paying the rent and getting all these operational costs without having a customer base. So, and it's kind of how we planned it initially, where it's like, let's build an online presence first, just to at least get the hype going. And, just tell people what we're planning to do, just to sort of build that following first. And yeah, you mentioned that our coffee is at a physical location at a place called the GoPro Coffee Room in Berkeley. And unfortunately, they had to close because of the pandemic. So we're nowhere physically now. So we're just purely online doing subscriptions, which is okay. I think even though it's been harder to sort of market and sort of grow and think about a physical space. I think, Instagram and some of the digital marketing still helps. And, we've been getting a lot more followers still. And, working and collaborating with Chic Riot, had definitely helped with promoting some of our stuff. So doing things like that, is still alive and well. And I think it's still sort of a really a good thing to have. Because a lot of times too, we think about changing up the menu and like changing our coffee blends and whatnot. It's like, well, like, do we need to, or do we just need to sort of like help sort of elevate some of our, marketing? And, start off with like a core base of products and then do it well, and then continue to just sort of like expand upon that.
Well, they talk about scarcity, like trying to create scarcity, whether it's, kind of artificial or genuine. And I think that might be a lot of opportunity for you guys to experiment with some new rows, to be like, okay, it's limited time run. We're doing this month. We've got this one after this. That's it. You know what I mean? So if you want to try it, you better do it now.
Do it now. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I think you guys, after tasting your coffee, especially, I think you guys have a lot of opportunity because you have a good product. If you had a bad product, I think you'd need a lot stronger marketing.
Yes, for sure.
What I mean? But it's like when you've got a good product, I feel like the marketing's a bit easier, right?
Yeah.
Because you just have to get people to try it.
Yep.
Once you get them to try it, they'll probably buy again.
Yep, so, I agree.
And
we've been very we've been very liberal of like samples, and we would like hand things out. And when we first launched Golden Hour, we're just like, I spent the first 3 months handing out free coffee to all these local dealerships just around the area, just like, hey, here's your coffee, here's some stickers, we're online, like try us out, because a lot of these dealers now are just having like coffee on the side, just as they're buying their bike, they're doing the paperwork. Hey, want some coffee? It's by Golden Hour. So that was sort of like my sort of mindset of where we can sort of pipe in our product. But seeing how some of the dealers are starting to wind down a little bit, and they've obviously had their layoffs and whatnot. So there's a little bit less opportunity of that now. So we're trying to figure out different avenues of where we can go. Because I think it's also not so much while we're motorcycle centric, it's almost doesn't have to be all about motorcycles at the same time. And it's figuring out how do we cater to an even broader group that, you don't have to ride, but you could be interested in it. But maybe you just like the coffee. And that's fine too.
Well, have you guys looked at the marketing, for instance, through, I think it's Black Rifle Trading Company? So Black Rifle Trading Company is a veteran-owned coffee company. And they, and I believe it's them, their marketing is just like all out military grunt style guns. They put a giant machine gun on a Prius, and we're like shooting things up with it on their Instagram account. And they almost like the coffee's almost secondary to all the military stuff that they do.
I'm on their page right now. That is very interesting.
And I think it's worked amazingly well for them because their coffee is decent. It's better than a lot of the stuff you're going to buy in the store, but not as good as some of the more, high-end coffees.
Yeah.
And it's like a nice middle of the road coffee, and their marketing's fantastic.
Yep.
And it's fun, right? It's the videos they put out in like the holidays and different things is just crazy entertaining, to where it's a commercial kind of, but it's mostly just hilarious.
Yeah.
And you don't have to really be in the military or be from the military family to laugh at the jokes.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that you guys could probably do something similar. Just go all in with motorcycles.
Right.
If you wanted to. I mean, I don't know what your personalities are like. These guys genuinely are into the military. Like, they're genuinely veterans, and they love that shit, right? So they just like go 100% in that direction. And at the same time, they're like, oh yeah, we've got coffee. By
the way, buy our coffee. But we know you're going to love this stuff.
Yeah. So I think it's a good way to, like, as long as you're passionate about something.
Yeah.
I think you can draw customers.
Yeah, definitely the authenticity plays a big part of it. And I think being as a motorcyclist and, being into motorcycles, it's still a pretty, it's a minority in this large pool of cars. And, me being in my 20s, I didn't even bat an eye at a motorcycle, but now I'm just like, I can't stop. And what more can get other people involved. And, some of the other things we also played around with was just like, hey, it'd be great to do like training videos, or just like a workshop video that's like, oh, I didn't know that about motorcycles, but wait, isn't this a coffee company? But wait, I kind of find this interesting as well. And that kind of sort of tailors to wanting to support that brand and that company to continue making, content like that. So, we've been thinking about more creative ways to do things as opposed to just putting pictures of coffee. We're playing around with different things. So
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the Fort 9 route, right? I mean, I don't know if you ever watch any Fort 9, but it's like, yes, they sell motorcycle equipment and they do videos about it too, but at the same time, they also do just general motorcycle interest videos. I mean, their whole Harley-Davidson history video that they just blew up on recently. I mean, that doesn't directly sell anything from their site, but it gets people to, come to the channel and feel like they're kind of getting to know the store, and they're adding some value, right? They're putting some additional value into the community, aside from just, hey, buy some stuff from me.
Yep.
And I think that, that's a great thing for people to do, because number one, there's a need. Otherwise, a million people wouldn't be, Googling or YouTubing how to ride a motorcycle, or, what's the best motorcycle for me, that kind of a thing. And, if you're already looking to get your, product out there, then helping people out seems like a good way to be a first introduction, right?
Yep. No, I completely agree with that. It's almost like just a stepping stone of really getting engaged into a certain product. Because, I think about just sort of all the things that just sort of like the physical materialistic things that I've just been interested in. It's like, well, how do you actually, what made you want to sort of purchase and, buy that? And it's like, well, it's usually something that doesn't really correlate to that in particular. And it's always something on the outside that's based on your interest that will just eventually lead you to that, to that end goal. I started riding a motorcycle because I wanted to commute better, but I wanted to buy a scooter instead, but that surely did not happen. So I think it's interesting how our minds work, of how we start to get engaged on things that we didn't expect to.
So let me ask you about Kiana then and her riding. I think that I saw that she'd taken the MSF as well and gotten her license.
Yep.
Has she bought a motorcycle or scooter? Is she thinking about doing it?
So she doesn't ride actively today, but she's always wanting to ride as a passenger on the back. So she loves to just sort of be with me and sort of like take the turns and sort of get that experience. So we did have a Suzuki S40 Boulevard that I did get for her. And it was a little bit too much from the coordination side. And I think most of it is just sort of like being out on the road and just sort of like understanding what people are doing out on the road on a motorcycle, just because of the vulnerability of it. And it's just sort of getting over that hurdle. So we traded in, we have a scooter now, just for her to start ramping up again on. And it's more so of just like not being able to ride, it's being able to ride in traffic. And I think that those are like the two hurdles that sort of just any rider really go up against. It's like, cool, I know how to ride a motorcycle, but knowing how to ride with crazy people around me is like a whole different story. And like being reactive to that is definitely sort of something that we have to practice for. So we've done some parking lot drills, which we've had fun doing. And I got some cones and stuff when we let on the parking lot. So that was like a weekend thing for us, which was fun. But kind of hard to do that now with all the smoke outside. So
do you follow a system when you're doing like the cone thing? Like, there's like Joey Palladino, there's Moto Jitsu, there's like 3 or 4 different people out there that I know of that kind of have their own like ways to do parking lot practice. So I'm curious if you guys
So a lot of it was what I tailored to how we did at the MSF class. So a lot of it's just sort of like low speed, swerving, how to park your bike in a curve in a sidewalk. So it's like doing the whole roll up and back up. And I do follow Moto Jitsu. He has some good videos too. but most of it was tailored to how sort of we did it at the MSF. So we'd like lay out like a cone in circles, and then, practice turning lefts and turning, making rights from a stop, putting your weight on a certain side when you're making that right turn, so all of it was slow speed maneuvers because, once you pick up speed, it's a little easier.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people underestimate like the skills required to keep a bike moving at 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, are a lot different than the skills it takes to keep a bike from falling over at 5 miles an hour.
Yep.
It's like, it's remarkably difficult to turn your bike at 5 miles an hour versus going into a curve at 30 miles an hour,
Yeah. Exactly.
So I do the Moto Jitsu thing. I got his book, and so I'll go and
cool.
He's got like the diagrams with like the spacing for the cones, and I've got one of those little measuring roller stick things.
Oh, awesome.
So I'll go out to the parking lot and I'll like measure out the distances and all that kind of thing. And I'm trying to improve that way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my cats are going crazy with my lights.
I was wondering what I was hearing in the background, and I think your cat was crying.
That's the one that's vocal. She's not really crying. She just does that.
Oh.
And she'll do it for like an hour sometimes. She'll just walk around like, and then the other one will get started too when she does that sometimes. And then you'll get this like stereo sound of like one in one room going, and then the other room, the one's going,
It's a pack. It's like a pack.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, they're sisters. So,
that makes sense.
I'm not surprised. Actually, a lot of these cats are related. They're from a mama cat that was living in our backyard. And we still haven't been able to get her fixed yet. Because she disappears. Like, she only shows up when she wants to have kittens. She'll have kittens in my backyard. And then after the kittens are old enough and we've taken them, she goes away and doesn't come back.
Interesting.
Yeah, but she loves to have kittens in our backyard. So
that's where she feels most comfortable.
We've got a trap right now in my girlfriend's SUV. And we just got to start putting food out there again, trying to get her to come back so that we can trap her and get her fixed and put her back out.
Oh my goodness! Yeah. So how many kittens did she have?
So
a total.
Okay, so the first time she did it, she had 2 kittens in our backyard, and we just took them in. We adopted them. That's how we got 3 cats. Because I had one that I adopted from my neighborhood, and then actually that was 4 because we had one that I adopted from my neighborhood. And then at my office, back when you could go to offices, there were a lot of strays that would have kittens in the back of the office. And normally you couldn't catch them. But one year, one of the people in the other offices caught one. And she saw me and she was like, "Hey, do you want a kitten?" I was like, "Do I want a kitten? Probably not. But I'm sure that they need a home." So I talked to my girlfriend and I was like, "Hey, do you want to adopt a kitten with me?" Because the lady at the office next door caught a couple of the kittens. And so we ended up adopting him. And then like a year or 2 after that, that's when Mama Cat, as we call her, ended up having 2 kittens in our backyard. And so we ended up taking them in and making them ours. And we'd intended to get her fixed then. But again, she pulled the whole disappearing act where she just stopped coming back there after her kittens were gone.
Yeah.
So anyway, this year she came out and she had 4 kittens in the backyard.
Gosh.
4. And we got 2 of them adopted out, and then 2 of them we ended up keeping. So technically 4 of the cats in the house are related and 2 of them are not.
That's why you have so many cats in your house.
Yeah, because I'm such a sap, It's like
I do the same thing. It's fine.
Yeah, and I get concerned like giving them to someone who's going to abuse them, or like let them go outside, because I don't believe in outside cats because it's just so dangerous.
Yeah.
So it's like I've got such high standards for who I want to take a cat, and I would not feel overly concerned about them.
Yeah.
So I could only find really 2 people like that. And then the other 2 had been in the house so long, it was like, well, now I'm attached. So
yeah, that's why I cannot be a foster home for pets. I would just keep them.
Yeah,
I cannot.
I'd be a hoarder. You know what I mean? It'd be like one of those things where people are like, "How many animals are in here?"
It's like all these litter boxes. Where are the cats?
Oh my God, I think we've got 4 or 5 litter boxes now. Because you can't have like 1 or 2 litter boxes if you've got 6 cats,
Yeah.
I think we've got 1 litter box per cat. So I think we probably have 6 litter boxes then.
Oh my goodness.
And it's Yeah, it's brutal. We're slowly trying to like switch them out to be the covered litter boxes.
Yeah.
Because the new kittens especially love to just fling litter all over the room. And, we're lucky enough that we've got a whole room that's kind of dedicated to the cats.
Yeah.
So they've got their litter box in there, and they got like a little scratch pad and within a window so they can sit in the window and look out if they want to.
Yep.
We don't lock them in there, but it's just kind of like a area that's theirs.
Their hideout.
But still, like, we feed them in there, and it's like, you walk in the morning and you don't want to be walking on litter, so
you're swiping your foot every time. Yeah.
We have a broom and dustpan we have to keep in there constantly because, the two youngest ones, oh God, they're horrible.
We found that the top, I forget what they're called, but there's basically the top entry ones. And there's like a little like ridges on the top, so it'll catch a lot of the litter when they get out of it. We found that to help a little bit.
We have this igloo one that we just got. And so it's a curve. So they enter in like this and they have to come around to get into the litter. That one has been helping a lot. So I think we're gonna switch them all over to those igloo like ones.
Nice. That's good.
Yeah. So what's the time frame? Like, let's say the pandemic ends in February.
Mm-hmm.
How soon do you guys think that you'd be ready to find a space and get open?
That's a good question. There's a lot of just also personal things that we've been just sort of trying to juggle because we know how much investment and dedication that needs to be put in when we do open up a storefront. And the biggest thing that comes to mind is like, oh, I need to hire people, and figuring out all these labor laws, and California is really strict about all these things, and it's a whole different ballgame once that storefront opens up. And in looking and trying to prepare for that, I'm thinking about some of the other things, in my career in IT, and AV, it's fine, I could hear. And we're thinking about family, we're going to have kids one day, so trying to think about how we want to sort of align things and where we want to be, really comes to play. And I think if, should this pandemic end and thinking about storefront, it's, man, I don't even have a date on this. Initially I was just like, man, let's just do it like now, like let's get things up to speed and really find a place. Cause I have been looking for, properties for lease and storefronts of what's possible, before the pandemic hit, just sort of shop around. And I think that'll still continue to do so. And I think it's something that we're not really actually rushing into, but we're still keeping an eye on. And if we find a really good opportunity to actually make a space the way we want it to be, then I think that's something we're actually going to jump into. So I think what really drives us is, what properties we find out there to lease, and does it work well in our instance, like based on the requirements. And if we find something and we feel really good about it, then let's take a leap of faith and do it. And going back to the whole family thing, we've obviously having a family isn't really a blocker for running a business because people do it all the time. I think it's just accepting the fact that are we willing to juggle all these things at the same time? And it seems to be, we seem to be in agreement that we can. And I've always wanted to have a family, and running a business, like a family business, maybe will last long enough to where my kids will start renting it and ride bikes and whatnot. And, that'd be awesome to have. And, for myself, being in IT, it's almost like, how long do I see myself doing that? And who knows, I think technology will always be a part of something that I do. Like if I were to run my own business, I'm sure I will do all the IT for it. And, I think it's something that will always be a part of me. So I guess the question is, there really isn't a date and time of when the storefront will be. But, we would love to at least think about it seriously in the next couple of years. If I were to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I just got back from Nicaragua in November, and a lot of the businesses out there, they are family owned and operated, but in addition to being family owned and operated, they also tend to share a space. So, for instance, one of the restaurants that I really loved going to out there was this like grill, and basically it was the same building just divided in half. So the front half of the building was the business space, and then the back half was their living space. And in other areas, it was kind of like bottom floor business, second floor living arrangements, so the commute was basically no commute. And it makes it a little bit easier, I think, for kind of families to be involved in it, because it's like, okay, well, my kid is here upstairs, so if anything really happens, I'm available, but I'm also down here working.
And that's a good point that you bring up. Like, sharing a building with another company or another service has actually been of a consideration for us. Also, we did a partnership with a local shop here, Marin Speed Shop. They're a motorcycle dealer, and we were planning all these things. Like, they served our coffee over there just in air press pods. And we were planning on doing a pop-up, because they'll do pop-ups every quarter or so. And then we're going to, be one of the people that are out there serving coffee. So, and we think that's sort of a good opportunity, because like, not only do you get to sort of not have to dedicate yourself to a full space, but you actually start to build a partnership with another company that also serves in the same interests. And so you're sort of like, it becomes this like co-op almost, of a place that'll help, serve each other's businesses. So that was sort of the aim also initially too, when I was sort of giving our coffee out to like motorcycle dealers and shops and stuff, because we were looking for sort of that partnership in, just to explore all these different avenues. And that was sort of our second phase of just like, after online, start doing pop-ups like farmers markets and whatnot, to build more of the physical presence there. But I almost think that would be actually the more likely scenario for us, as opposed to having a completely separated storefront. So I've been to Japan multiple times. Keanu's been there twice, and it seems to be very common there to have sort of cooperative businesses be that. And I think a lot of it just because of how densely packed everything is, at least in Tokyo. You'll have an apparel shop that's tailored to more of like outdoorsy type things, and you have a coffee shop that's just like nested in the corner, that still has like the same aesthetics but has really good coffee, but it's like their own separate entities, but they kind of they reel people in that way, so they'll shop after they get their coffee, sort of thing. So that's definitely been something that's of interest for us, to go that route as well.
Yeah, Nordstrom's and some of the higher end stores do things like that too, right?
Yep.
I think that there's so much opportunity out there, really. I mean, I know that food trucks are super popular too. And you mentioned thinking about like doing some sort of like a bike with a sidecar or something. And I think a lot of that's really cool. I saw something like that when I was in, I think I was in Montreal, or was it Vancouver? Maybe it was Vancouver, where they had like this small vehicle, and it was covered in like stuff. And from a distance, I didn't know what it was, and but it caught the eye, right? And I didn't realize what was happening until I got up close. And they had converted like a station wagon to being a coffee shop. And so like one of the windows would flip down, and they would serve the coffee through there, and you could like look in the window, and they've got like a little barista stand, like station set up in this like station wagon.
Yeah.
And it was actually super cool. And they had all this like, cartoonish like writing on it and stuff. And like the menu was painted on the side of the car. And it was,
that's awesome.
It was really neat. And
That's
it was
creative.
a fun experience to see. So
that's cool. Yeah. So CC Motorcycles in Oregon, or Portland, they do the whole Ural thing. They have a coffee cart set up on as a sidecar, and I was like, man, that thing is awesome. Like, how do I do that? And so that's definitely something that I would love to do one day, and just kind of roll up into a pop-up somewhere and just start serving. But I'm curious to see if there's any like rules and like sanitation, like
it's California. There's going to be rules. There's probably like 100-page book on just like how big the space needs to be, and like running water and the temperatures, and anyway. Yep. I'm curious about your guys' name though. So you call it Golden Hour. The bag says Golden Hour Coffee, and your website is Golden Hour Coffee Moto. What is the official name of the company?
The official name is Golden Hour Coffee Moto. That's what's on paper. And the different renditions of how our name just starts to just sort of chop itself up in different places. Mostly it's gone to sort of trademarking. It's gone to sort of what's available from a URL domain perspective. And our initial name just sort of like informally is just Golden Hour Coffee. And there hasn't really been sort of a consideration of, how do we actually want to market ourselves in social media, and sort of like how we market our product and stuff. We're starting to lean towards just motorcycle or Golden Hour Coffee. Mostly that's just because that's our core product. And so the moto part was sort of something that was explored just to at least give some people incentive that like, hey, there's a motorcycling aspect to this. But we're starting to sort of think about how we sort of want to rebrand ourselves, because a lot of what we're doing and how we sort of explain to other people is we say Golden Hour Coffee. And I was actually kind of smiling when you said, where did the name Golden Hour come from? It's like, okay, well, if you want to know the interesting inside story on Golden Hour, we were listening to Casey Musgraves, and her album's called Golden Hour, and we were slightly obsessed with that album at one point in our lives. And during this time, it was when we were thinking about the company, and I was like, we should call it Golden Hour. And I was like, why Golden Hour? I was like, it's Casey Musgraves, and because like riding a motorcycle in a golden hour sunset is also awesome. And so I kind of put those two and two together, and sort of thought about it more from a lifestyle perspective. But that's where it kind of sort of came from, was Casey Musgraves. And I haven't really told a lot of people that. And it's something that they just kind of have to figure out. And a little Easter egg that I did is that on our Instagram is I follow Casey Musgraves on the Golden Hour account. And it's just like, it was like the first account I followed, but I keep all their posts hidden just so it doesn't market itself.
Well, that's really cool though. I mean, I like to hear fun stories like that. Especially when it's something meaningful, like, sometimes people just pick a name because it's like, well, I got to pick something.
Yeah.
And they just get indecisive and they're like, whatever, it's going to be this.
Yeah. Just bring up the name generator or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's my name,
inside jokes is good.
My name on YouTube anyway, and Instagram and stuff, is Desert Mofo. Right. And that whole thing originated because I love photography. I live in the desert and I ride a motorcycle. So I just was like, okay, how can I kind of, and plus I tend to curse and things. I don't really care about trying to like make it too, I don't know,
professional or something.
Like, this is how I talk, and I'm not going to be that concerned. So it was kind of like a sort of a foreshadowing, I suppose, of what people can expect also from the channel. So it's like desert, so I live in the desert, mo for motorcycle, fo for photographer, right? And then plus mofo. Yeah. You're probably going to hear some F-bombs on my, on my YouTube
for
video.
the obvious reasons.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where that came from.
That's awesome.
So I love hearing other stories like that too. It's just my point. But
yeah, ours wasn't. It's funny. We reflect on it, and it's just like there's really nothing truly meaningful of like how it sort of shapes on why we're called Golden Hour, but we named it because of an inside joke that we had while we were making the company.
yeah, but it's not just a joke though, right? Because you guys genuinely loved the album.
Yeah.
So it does. It comes from something personal. Anyway,
yeah.
Right. It's not again like a random name generator where it was like we just need something, so insert placeholder here.
Yeah. Yeah. So we like it. The only one thing that we have definitely been reconsidering is the logo. So we're definitely playing around with different ideas. And some of the aspects of our existing logo was like, we wanted something simple, something that's sort of just out there. That when you see it, you're like, oh, I know exactly what that is. And finding a specific color palette that defines what we are. To help sort of build that brand, was sort of the initial thinking. We're kind of playing around with different ideas now of what aesthetic we're looking for. And, some of the modern sort of logos that we've seen, I think it's just more so of just, what's the word I'm looking for? Stereotypical, especially from like modern, when you think of like modern tech companies and you see like these like little pieces of logo, it's like, oh, it spells like a B using triangles and circles. It's like, oh, that's easy. But, does that really sort of define sort of our personality and product and creativity? We know from a brand perspective, it could be a good positive, but is that really how we want to market ourselves?
Well, I think it matters who you want your customers to be, right? Because the logo should be a reflection of the customers. Everything in a business should be designed as a customer focus. Like, if you're not thinking about how the customer is going to interpret something or react to something, at every single level, then you're going to you just make more work for yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But who designed your logo now?
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you obviously had an idea in mind when you put it together.
Yeah. The logo itself, I played around with like different color palettes and, I worked with this online tool that sort of helped shape everything together. So I just kind of like pieced stuff and was like, yeah, this looks pretty cool. It's like, it's out there. It's, the font, what was sort of generated from that. And I want to expand from there, but now I'm just sort of like rethinking of like, you sort of said it, like who are the customers, and who I want the customers to be. And I worked with another artist who helped sort of redesign like a t-shirt design for us. And it's basically like a frog riding a motorcycle, but it's just like a traditional sort of drawing, sort of like the old like pirate font that you would see in some of the traditional tattoos. So we thought about using that as a potential logo for us as sort of a redesign. But that maybe at least to start would be a shirt design for us. So,
I definitely like your guys' logo, but I do see what you mean too about it being a little bit simple and just kind of like looking at your vibe and Kiana's vibe on Instagram and stuff. It does seem a little bit outside of your normal aesthetic.
yeah.
But on the flip side, it looks really good on your guys' bags, the packaging.
That's true. We were really happy about how the bags turned out.
Yeah, your guys' packaging is really good. I
Thank you.
absolutely hate the Starbucks style packaging. And so when I got yours in the box and I saw the way it opens and the way that it stays standing up, and I was, anyway, all the relevant information is like right on the front of the bag too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really liked it, but who knows? Maybe I'm not the specific customer that you guys would be targeting. You
were absolutely the customer we were trying to target. That's awesome. That's really good feedback actually to hear.
But yeah, because of like, I'm looking at the bag right now on your Instagram page. So I think that, everything from that little gas can for energy. I'm assuming not just for the motorcycle, right? Like this coffee is now the fuel for you. And I don't know. I think it's a really well designed bag and label for the bag, and the logo blends in really well with it. But again, it's still got to be a reflection of you and who you're going after. So if you think it needs some tweaking, obviously, follow your instincts. But
yeah, for sure. But it's good. It's good to hear. We don't get too much feedback on our designs and stuff, so it's good to good to hear that.
I've had a few logos now that I've had to work on because for my photography business, I did one myself, and it was horrible. It was cliche. It was everything wrong with the logo, right? And then I have a friend who actually does logos and web design and such for a living. I mean, that's his sole business. And so I had him help me design my new logo for my photography business. And it was just so much better, And one of the things that we kind of worked through when we were designing that logo was, who are my customers, right? And so what we did was we kind of pulled logos from companies that also serve those customers. And so on the photography side, I was trying to target sort of higher end female customers. And so we were going through these different brands that also target high end female customers and see if we could pull elements from those logos for my logo.
Yeah.
And from there, we also tried to tie it back to photography. And so what he did, the guy who designed my logo, was he also went in and he pulled like some old film company logos. And we kind of combined the two. And all it is my DG Young, right? Like it's just letters. But from the font and the spacing, the sizing and the location, like it all just really works well together. So anyway, I got some background in working with someone who knows about logos, and that's how I've kind of absorbed some of that. And then because I like marketing anyway, I find it super interesting, like all the thought, like because you see a logo, you don't think anything of it then other than, oh, cool, right?
Yeah.
But then when you get the kind of behind the curtain peek, if you're a curious person, then you're gonna probably follow that rabbit hole like I did.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just go deeper.
Now I've designed one. Well, I work with someone else to help design my logo for the Modern Squid. That's one I just kind of had the idea of. I was like, you know what? I want a squid and I want its legs to turn into a motorcycle, and I worked with someone. She sent me a few different iterations of that. And I was like, I want this element from that element from this one, put them together. Boom.
That's awesome.
And
that sounds like getting a custom tattoo. That's a process for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you hope to find someone that you can work well with and who understands what you're trying to convey. Especially if you're like me, you're not an artist, right? Like I enjoy art, but I myself am not an artist.
Yeah, so, same.
Yeah, for my Desert Mofo logo that I just got done, I basically use Photoshop because I do photography. So Photoshop's easy. And what I did is I just went and I took a helmet and like this bull skull and stuff. And I just Photoshopped it together and I sent it over to her. And I'm like, this is kind of what I want, but I want it to be like an actual like minimalistic black and white logo.
Yeah.
And then she sent me a few options back and I picked the one I've got now. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's good to have someone you can trust.
Yeah, definitely. I've been lucky enough to work with a few people now who are really good at what they do and are good at interpreting my terrible descriptions. So.
Awesome.
All right. Well, we are getting pretty far out there, and I don't want to keep you all day.
All good. No worries.
Let's go over a few more things. I saw that you guys were in Hawaii in January.
Yes.
Was that business, pleasure, or both?
Both. We tend to combine both sides to it every time we go out, on vacation. It was mostly for pleasure. But we always try to make it a thing to where we visit shops and sort of see different perspectives on how they operate and do things and what their designs look like and how big the storefront is. And it sort of helps brainstorm of what we sort of look for down the road and, what would we do differently. So I would say like 20% of it is sort of business. Now, is it like a business expense to go to Hawaii sometimes when we buy coffee and whatnot. But it's good to do that. And we went to Vietnam last year or a couple of years ago, and we did the same thing, and it's so interesting to see how different countries operate, just from a hospital perspective, a service perspective, and just from a quality product perspective. And it really gives us a lot of ideas of how much you can do with little space, and sort of the different things you can have on your menu. Like, hey, having only like 4 things on your menu is like just fine. And there's tons of people coming in because the branding looks good, like it looks like an approachable place from off the street, and you can gather inside, and people were waiting in line, and you're not spending 2 minutes looking at the menu when you're at the register because you don't know what you want. Like, well, we only have four things. So different things like that gives a lot of ideas of utilizing our vacations as a business. But Hawaii in itself, man, we were supposed to go again this summer, when unfortunately that didn't happen. But hopefully in the future again.
So a couple quick things. One, your mic feels like it's rubbing. It sounds like it's rubbing against something right now. So I don't know if it's your hair or if it's.
It's probably my hair.
All right. And then the other thing is, I'll wait for you to.
All right.
There we go. Did you guys visit the countries where you were trying to source your beans, or how did that come about?
No, we visit the country just mostly from a pleasure perspective. Vietnam was somewhere where we just wanted to go to, in Southeast Asia, and the coffee wasn't really the centric topic of our visit, but that was definitely something that we wanted to get perspectives on. Most of our coffees, we go through an importer that's based in Oakland. So we get our green coffee from there. We do want to make it a thing in the future to visit the source of where coffee is grown, like in South America, figuring out what that would look like down the road and what farms, that we would be willing to visit. So it's definitely a goal of ours to try and visit. But currently that won't be the case for a while.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hear Hawaii, and I know that they've got a coffee industry out there, and I'm not sure about Vietnam. I think likely
they do. Yeah.
So I'm just curious because I know you'd said that you guys were trying to take care to make sure that you're ethically sourcing your beans and such. So.
And I know eventually. Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm sorry. We're letting my dog out to go potty, and my light's kind of blocking the door. That's been top of mind of sort of how where does our coffee come from, and sort of of the farmers and who we're supporting, and obviously our volume isn't as much as some of these other companies, but we're always proactively looking at the best ways to do that. So what are some of the concerns surrounding the coffee industry for anyone who might not be aware of what we're talking about?
So I think Kiana can provide more light on this also, but just from my perspective, I think this also has to do with the climate change that's been happening also. A lot of farmers in coffee, long term, we're going to lose all these sources in these regions and sort of how the coffee grows, and we're losing the climate that it needs to be grown in. So I know there's quite a few sort of articles that sort of goes around sort of all the farmers that are trying to keep their farms alive. Unfortunately, I don't know all those specifics, but that's sort of just a general consensus. So, there's supply is starting to drain out a little bit.
And I've heard before that sometimes the bigger companies can take advantage of the smaller farmers and not offer them, appropriate money knowing that they'll take what they can basically, versus what it's truly worth when you look at what they're selling it for and how much money they're making every year.
Yeah.
And that sort of a thing too. And, I think that's an important consideration for folks, but, I'm of the opinion personally that, you should do that as much as possible, but, also kind of take into account, it's like, okay, well, did the people working have an opportunity before to sell their coffee at all?
Mm-hmm.
And if they did, how much were they selling it for? And are you offering more than that or less than that? Because if you're coming in and you're offering more than what they were originally selling it for, but you're making a lot of money off of it, it's still, in my mind, a bit unethical.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that the farmers are probably, they're never complaining about making more money, right? I think that it's we have the leisure to sort of think about things like the full ethics of how much they should be getting for the coffee. And I think that we should, because we do have that ability. But at the same time, I don't know if it would be a net benefit if all of a sudden people were to be like, okay, well, let's boycott this coffee company because they only pay them, $1 a pound more than what they were selling it before.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, now they've lost $1 a pound more than what they, instead, maybe you should have just kept pressuring them to pay them more instead of the boycott,
Exactly. I know. That's kind of what it is. Just pay them more. Jesus. Yeah. Yeah, it's an ongoing topic. And I know a lot of just micro roasters deal with this subject all the time of like where they source their coffee. And I don't know what the right answer is and what the actual direction is. It's there is the general consensus is, definitely farmers, like they need to get paid more, like for their labor. And I think it's just continuing that path of finding out how do we continue to support those farmers. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I definitely would love to talk to Kiana at some point then, if she's kind of she's a coffee person,
Yeah.
But it seems like you're the bike person, so you're more the connection with the show.
Yes.
Because, my goal with the Modern Squid is just to get to know people, right? Like I think that people are really interesting, and there's a lot of good stuff going on that people are doing that I think people will be interested in hearing about. And what kind of connects everyone through the Modern Squid is our love of motorcycles. But at the end of the day, I want it to be a podcast about people.
Yep.
And which is why I spend a lot of time talking to people about just general things in their life, because I'm genuinely interested in people. And, it's just the motorcycles are just the glue that brings us together,
Yep. Yep. I know. I feel like that sort of drives all of our goals. It's like, we need to find the glue. That's motorcycling. All right, let's build on that.
I mean, it's the human experience, right? It's like we're human beings are social creatures, and you're always looking for opportunities to kind of find your tribe, so to speak. And I think that anything that gives you an opportunity for that can be really important to people's lives. Because I mean, again, motorcycling is fun, right? I love to get on my motorcycle and ride. But what adds an extra element to it is all the people I'm meeting through motorcycles. And this is during a pandemic when I can't meet people in person. And I'm still finding, a lot of friends and community through motorcycling online that I never would have had without a motorcycle.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. It's there's sort of this aspect of seeing an interest that, and I think a lot of people also drive on the energy of other people being passionate about certain things. So it's like, in our sense, motorcycles are glue, but for at least Golden Hour, coffee is the glue to bring motorcycle people in. So, they kind of work conversely with each other.
Well, you guys get double glue. That's all.
We just get double the glue.
That's right.
Works out.
Yeah, I mean, they say niche down twice, right? In a lot of books and things when they're talking about business. Ah, geez, Louise, ouch! Sorry, my cat is attacking my feet because I've got this. Here, let me just show you. I've got.
Oh my gosh!
It's the table with a tablecloth thing on it, and so she sees my feet under there, it's probably actually the boy because I see the girl here, and oh my gosh, he has like super sharp claws.
Man, you got a handful over there.
I'm gonna pull this up so that they don't attack my feet anymore. Holy moly. And they like to climb me. I'll be sitting at my desk working, and just out of nowhere, they'll jump up on me and start climbing me.
Yeah.
And if I'm wearing jeans, that's okay. But if I'm wearing shorts, oh my gosh, they don't care I'm wearing shorts. They'll just use my skin like
you're a walking cat scratch post.
Oh man. Some days.
Some days.
Anyway,
so you've been writing since 2019, right?
No. This year, April.
Oh, so only been a few months.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I am brand new, which is why I talk a lot about parking lot practice and trying to get confidence on the bike. And
that's great.
I can really relate to people who are learning to ride because I'm right there with you. You know, it's like your wife and I would probably be able to relate really well because it's like I'm just now getting out into traffic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I've reached that point where I'm that dangerous confidence level where it's like I think my skill probably doesn't match my confidence or my comfort at least.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really freaked out by riding on the street with a bunch of cars around me, but I probably should be more freaked out than I am. You know,
it's always good on the side of caution. Yeah, for sure.
That does remind me though. So this is a question that I like to ask everyone. On the scale of full squid to full ATGAT, where would you fall?
Is this a scale of like 1 to 10 or?
It's, I like to leave it open. If you want to create your own numbering system, you can. If you want it to be like, I don't know, I'm a half squid, half ATGAT, whatever. It doesn't matter.
ATGAT for sure. So there are exceptions, but they're very small exceptions. The only time that I actually got on a bike without armor was on track days. Track days meaning like in the parking lot on the pit, not actually on the track. But if I'm out on the street, if I'm going to be in public roads, it's ATGAT all the time. Now, I've let Kiana off the hook, a number of times of her just like not having to wear boots or gloves and stuff. And, I'd give her a hard time a little bit on it, but it's like, okay, and I'll just, as bad as it's like, I'll just be extra cautious. Obviously that doesn't matter. But there are certain times where comfort over protection, you start to sort of weigh those two out. As far as for me, just alone being a rider, like I always wear full gear. There has been times where I'm just like, man, we just had our heat wave here in the Bay Area. And I'm going to go down to the store, do a pickup. And like, I just want to go just in my riding pants and just go with a shirt. And I'm like, well, I could do that. Or, I did buy a leather jacket that has a lot of airflow that wouldn't really make sense if I didn't wear it because I'd be just as cool anyways, or cool as in like airflow wise. So, as much as I would love to not have armor, I just sort of like just say it's just do it. Helmet, gloves, jacket. I wear these pants by Ugly Bros. I don't know if you know them. They're the best riding pants I've ever owned. I used to have a bunch of pants by Revit. But Ugly Bros, they don't sell them on like Rosella or some of the major distributors. They just sell direct on their website. But like I wear them like almost every day, and they're like normal stretchy pants, but you can like slip in armor as you need to on and off, and you're not like really bound to feeling like you're wearing bulky pants all the time.
So do they have like a Dyneema or Kevlar weave or something? You just said stretchy, and that doesn't usually go well with Kevlar.
There's like various stretchy panels in the knee and the hip area, but on the inside, there's a killer weave on the inside on the abrasion, and then like it's got knee pockets where you can like flip them on and off. They're not cheap, but I think I validated the expense with wearing them every single day, and with a peace of mind also.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any really cheap riding jeans out there that are effective. You know, like I tend to see like anything under $200 doesn't come with armor. You know, it's like, okay, well, you bought the jeans, great, under $200, but now you got to buy the knee and hip armor. It's like, okay, well, now you're getting back up into that $150, $200 range, like, which is sort of the cheapest I've found that you can find riding jeans that come with armor.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I got some from, I think it's Bullet. And they're totally not comfortable. The interesting thing is that I wear 38 jeans in the waist. And for like Calvin Klein and Old Navy and Lucky Brand, like all those different jeans, 38s fit me in a way where I have to wear a belt, otherwise they kind of slide down. But I'm stocky, right? Like I'm part Scottish, and so I've got like this like thick thighs, and you know, and I'm not that tall, so it's like I need a little bit of room. But if I go another size and it gets too long for me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so the 38s are normally, you know, baggy enough that I need a belt, but they're also baggy enough that my legs don't feel like they're getting squished, and that kind of a deal. Well, I got them that same, actually, I think I got 40s in the riding pants because I either got 38s or I got 40s, one of the two, but I was trying to go big with them as I could. And I had to go buy a freaking belt extender thing. Oh
my God.
Like, it hooks onto the button, you know? And then it gives you like an extra inch so I can actually close it, because they wouldn't freaking close.
Oh my gosh.
And so they run small in the waist, and they're you know, they're not stretchy at all.
Oh geez.
So I mean, I'm happy.
That does not sound comfortable.
But yeah, they're just like, I couldn't believe how much smaller. I would have thought like, you know, designer jeans tend to be, they run a little bit small, right? So I kind of thought that the Calvin Kleins would be more of a slim fit, and I was like, okay, if I can wear a 38 and they're baggy in like a sort of a designer jean, then I should be good to go getting that same size or a little bit larger in motorcycle jeans. And I was 100% wrong.
Man, it's a hit or miss with these riding pants, really.
And I'm trying to do the social distancing thing, so I didn't go out to like cycle gear and try them on or anything. I just like, you know, I knew my size and I ordered them online.
Took a chance on it.
And, you know, the thing is, I'm glad I have them though, because I did take a spill recently, really slow speed. I've dropped my bike twice now, both super low speeds. Once I didn't even fall over because I was in gravel and the bike just kind of like slipped out underneath me. And then once I was going into a traffic circle in a neighborhood, right? So it's no traffic, and one other truck who decided he didn't want to wait for me and kind of gunned it. And all my practice for emergency stopping has been like straight up, going straight. And this time I had leaned over and I was starting to curve. And so I did my emergency braking, but I pulled too much, like too hard on the brakes for the lean angle, and I went down. And the hip armor was magical. In that I didn't even have a bruise, you know, like I dropped down and I fell with the bike, slid maybe a little, like 6 inches or something. Like I was going so slow, I barely even slid, you know, and I stood up, no bruising, no scratching. And I was like, okay, the gear works. You've already like paid off your gear. I was like, this is perfect. Now I'm going to wear these every single time, because in the past, Phoenix gets so hot and the riding jeans are a lot warmer than normal jeans. So there have been days that I've debated not wearing them. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just wear some regular jeans because I'm not really going anywhere and just kind of putzing around the neighborhood. And I've ended up just wearing the riding jeans anyway, because I try to be at Gat. But now it's like, now I don't even doubt myself. I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm wearing the riding jeans because I know this armor actually works.
I know and that's the one thing. It's just like, I'm just going down the street or I'm just going to be going there. And man, yeah. What was that? Well, I forget. So it was like most accidents happen when you're near home or something like that.
Do you know why?
Well, my first thought was because you know where you are, you're comfortable and you're like, I know this neighborhood and you know what to expect. And I think you're just comfortable.
So it is a brain function, actually. So what's happening is that your brain can only process and pay attention to so much stuff, right? And so a lot of what your brain does is fill in information just from stored data, just like a computer, right? Like cache from a computer. And the more well-known the area is to you, the more data your brain fills in without actually processing the information that's there. So a car, for instance, might not see you even if he looks right at you, because he's not really paying attention. His eyes are moving in your direction, but his brain isn't processing it, because the brain is trained to look for cars, and we're not a car. So you turn your eyes and you look. Your brain's looking for cars. Your brain doesn't see a car, so your brain will fill in an empty street. Because it's seen that street a million times. It knows exactly what that street's supposed to look like. And so the car will just pull out in front of you and you'll be like, what the hell? You looked right at me. How did you not see me? And they're like, I didn't see you. And like, we made eye contact. And it's like, and then come to find out, I was reading some stuff and seeing videos on it. It's literally your brain deleting the motorcycle out of the picture.
Yep.
And they were talking about, on the flip side, like one of the reasons you get sleepy on long drives, like if you're driving to, I don't know, in my case, from Arizona to California, right? I don't drive from Arizona to California that much. So my brain doesn't know what to fill in. So your brain actually has to process and develop a picture in your head from what it's seen instead of what it knows. And so it's like, you drive 2 hours there and you're starting to get sleepy and you're like, why am I getting, like, I don't understand. Like I drive an hour or two commute every day and I don't get sleepy, but I do 2 hours on a road trip and I'm feeling tired and sleepy. It's because your brain is literally working harder and needs more rest. So anyway,
it's exhausted.
Picking up. Yeah, it's actually getting exhausted.
Yeah. So anyways, all the gear in my book. If you don't have to wear gear, it better be on a closed course and controlled environment, like a track pit. That's it. Yeah,
I learned in Nicaragua in like a grass field, and not exactly grass. It was kind of like hard packed dirt and then grass. I don't know how to explain it. It's but anyway, I was wearing shorts and a button down cotton shirt.
Nice.
No helmet. And my buddy who was teaching me how to ride, I've got a video of it, and he's like, sorry, Claudia, I promise he'll be okay. Claudia is my girlfriend's name.
It's like, what are you doing to him?
Yeah. Because we weren't in traffic. It was just like,
That's awesome. And it's interesting that the first time you rode it, you just had no armor on. Like, or just like no protection.
Nothing at all.
That's
and I'd never had any interest in motorcycles. But I like learning new things. So my buddy was like, you want to learn? And I was like, of course I want to learn. I'll never use this for anything, but I'd love to learn it.
Yeah.
And then I loved it. So
look where you are now.
Yeah, like you wanted a scooter, you hopped on a bike, and you were like, ooh, wait a minute.
This is better than I expected. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that I'd wanted to cover. All right. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. And I hope at some point to also get Kiana, on here as well.
Of course. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. And I'm sorry Kiana couldn't make it today, but I think if you had any other outstanding questions, feel free to reach out directly to us. And, obviously you can chat us on Instagram as well.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do like a live on Instagram or something sometime where you throw another person on there.
Yep.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Modern Squid podcast. If you'd like to hear more from Brad and Golden Hour Coffee, you can visit their Instagram at Golden Hour Coffee Moto. And in their profile, you'll find a link to their website, which is also goldenhourcoffeemoto.com. Thanks again, and see you guys next week.